Вітаємо всіх глядачів. З вами Тетяна Гончарова. Другий день поспіль триває марафон в прямому ефірі «Транзит-2020». Я хочу нагадати всім, хто нас дивиться, що вчора Україна і Росія підписали договір про транзит газу. У Відні на політичному рівні перемови тривали 4 дні і безпосередньо завершилися вони 30
days, and the negotiations have ended on the 30th of December. Yesterday, the agreement has been signed. Today, we're going to discuss the details of this agreement with the different experts, but I would like to emphasize that at 14:30, we will have the briefing for the head of Naftogaz, Andriy Kobolev, and all of their details, all of their main moments, all of the questions and issues that might be sensitive for our society, that might not be clear. Maybe you still don't have the answer for that. You will be able to hear all the answers during the briefing at 14:30. But now please welcome Alexander Kharchenko, the head of the Center for the Energy Research. Alexander, pleased to welcome you here. So the very first question for you, Alexander, it's quite clear overall that the document presupposes gas transit. And all of the media have mentioned that, but not all of the media have spoken about it in detail. So let us now talk about the volume. So let us now discuss what the president said, that we'll have 7 billion in 5 years. We had the different numbers before that. Explain the details of this agreement. You know, I would like to start with a different thing, but I would like to start with a different thing, but I would like try to amend you a little bit, because, you know, in the recent 4 days and before those 4 days, there were lots of months of work that wasn't the political but the technical negotiations between the two companies, between 3 companies, Gazprom, Naftogaz, and the operator of the gas and transport system of Ukraine. Because the basis, the foundation for this negotiation to happen was the protocol that has been signed a couple of days ago. So that was the political level. On the 20th of December, that was the political level. Then today, it was, for these 4 days, that was the technical and commercial levels between the companies when they have tried to negotiate the main details. You know, they say devil in details. So, like, that's for all of the agreements, the devil is in details, so they're trying to find the resolutions for the details. So they try to, first of all, negotiate those devilish details. I know that negotiations were really complex and complicated. I know that have been really complicated emotion-wise, technique-wise, commercial-wise. There was a very complex and complicated activities. As far from what we've heard by now, the negotiations are complete. That's okay for a lot of people. That's good for the Europeans who will not have the increasing of the gas price. This is a good news for Ukrainians, because the Ukrainian gas prices are not going to increase, also because of the increase of the European market. Why? Because the question of the transit of gas through Europe is some kind of a trigger for the European prices in the market. If we didn't have the transit, then the prices would increase. So if the transit isn't there, then the gas is cheaper, which means that for us as a customers, we will receive it on cheaper prices, which is a good for us. This is the first part of all of it. This is the main moment for the customers, for the consumers of the gas in Ukraine. Yes, well, basically, in any chance, we can now say, we can be confident that the Ukrainian gas consumers, they're not going to pay more this year than they will pay today. And they will not freeze. Well, like, of course, it's once again depends. So those questions are not discussed. So security-wise, we were basically insuranced when we were ready and we were prepared. But price-wise, the situation is very good for all of the participants of these negotiations. Okay, now let's have a brief question that I would like to ask you for a brief answer. If the political part of it took months to do that, but then from the 20th to 30th of December, we only had this 10 days for the further negotiation, does it mean that the commercial story is much briefer and clearer? Does it need less days to be solved? Or because they were still already had the time, we had to sign up this agreement till 29th of December. Well, you know, there's no secret in that, because the commercial part has been prepared all together with the political part of it. So when we had the political negotiations in the very same time, at the same time, the operator of the GTS of Ukraine, they've come to all of the negotiations and conditions. They've sent it to Gazprom. Gazprom has received it for months and a month and a half ago. They have tried to research through that. That's a very thorough process. It's a long preparation, because the agreements have been prepared for a very long time before. They had to become compliant to the European practices. And after the long period of settlements with Gazprom, then what's just taking place. So this is the final moment when all of these sides are trying to negotiate most of the things. But there was just all of the things that were in work for 3 or 4 months before. And I would like to remind all of those people that were waiting for the 13:30, we are waiting for Andrei Kobolev, and now we would like to get to the details of the transit agreement between Russia and Ukraine. Let us think about some figures, and there is, and they've mentioned the number of 7 billion in 5 years, and we've tried to understand whether the agreement is different from the protocol. Speaking on the cubic meters, we're speaking about 65 cubic meters for the first year, or something has changed. The problem is that I haven't seen the agreement personally yet, and I don't know whether it's there in the public space, and I don't know whether they will be publicly published. So I have doubts. This is the agreements between the two, or even between the two commercial entities. And you know, Naftogaz in this story has a very interesting role in this. It's like an agent role for that. And I had a really interesting parallel to that. Naftogaz is kind of a tourist agency for Gazprom. And maybe there's a moment someone who has found the hotel in place, the services in place, they hold the tours for people from Gazprom. And they know that, like, the work with the gas transport system of Ukraine, then Naftogaz takes the works with for themselves. And Gazprom, they just give the gas, and there's no guarantee that the gas will be in time for where it has to go. So basically, there is this kind of detail that Naftogaz is now having the agent's role in this process, and the main operator of the gas and transmission system, this is the main actor, because they're going to be doing it physically and technically. Okay, but basically they will also receive, Naftogaz will receive some money from that. Naftogaz will receive money from Gazprom based on the tariffs that have been settled by the Ukrainian Council on Energy, and they're going to be paying to the operator of the GTS of Ukraine. And later on, well, at least it has been announced preliminary that Naftogaz is going to even to have a little bit of profits from this, all of this activity. And all of this money, they're going to be further on divided on halves, as has been announced before. They might be announced. There is the transit tariff. The transit tariff, that's the operator of the GTS of Ukraine has to receive in order to have enough money to operate the system. The tariff has been calculated in a very simple way. So we have the expenditures, we have the volume of gas that's going to be pumped, and one is divided by other. So we have this structure of the tariff that is resembling the European structure. Thus, the tariff that the GTS operator was going to cover all of the expenses for the GTS operator to transfer this specific volume of gas. And the Naftogaz, depending on how Naftogaz as an agent, as an intermediary for that, should receive additional profits. It's a separate conversation. I don't know how it has been finalized. Only the heads of the Naftogaz of Ukraine know how it has been finalized. The cubic meters. So the cubic meters, all of these numbers that we have heard, and about the 7 billion, I would like to listen from you. So because a lot of people have already heard, yes, a lot of people ask us, 14:30, we will have the briefing of Andrei Kobolev. Here we have 20 minutes left before Andrei Kobolev's briefing, and we will have more details on this agreement that hasn't been yet published in the public space, but we can now assume and forecast and analyze the numbers that we have. But still, we will have more information from the head of the Naftogaz, Andrei Kobolev. $7 billion that Ukraine will earn for 5 years, in 5 years, that the president has said. You know, I believe president is very pessimistic in this case. Why? Because minimalist or pessimist? Yes, minimalist or pessimist, maybe like, but okay, maybe he has to be pessimistic and minimalistic in his evaluations, because the situation is very simple. The Nord Stream is not there. It's not expected. The counterpart, they said that they're going to take in their ships and vessels to a different projects, and they will not be bad. In one of your interviews in the different media, then you said that you at least need 3 more years to build up the Nord Stream 2. Yes, what it means in practice it's quite clear. We have transmitted 90 billion cubic meters. So if they don't have the Nord Stream 2, then Gazprom will not decrease this demand, because they have the clients in Europe, they need to deliver this gas. We don't have Nord Stream, then you have to use Ukrainian GTS. And in my opinion, understanding that Yuri Vitranko, who has been the head of the negotiations from the side of Naftogaz, and a couple of other participants from both of the sides, they've told us, they've said that there's going to be a different volume of gas if they would like to transport through Ukrainian GTS, then they will calculate a separate tariffs. And I would like to ask you what is going to be the volumes of it. We have the volumes that are planned and some additional ones. Yes, everything is quite clear. Starting from 80 billion cubic meters a year, this is going to be the additional volumes. I have no reasons, I do not see any reasons why it's going to be decreased. There's no need to decrease the amounts of transportation. If we will have 80 billions, then we will earn much more than $7 billion that the president has said what you have asked me about, because Gazprom is going to pay additional fees for additional volumes. If they haven't fracked it and booked additional volumes in a year before in advance or half year in advance, then the price is going to even higher, and sometimes the coefficient is even 2.5. So now I understand, Alexandra, thank you, why all of the Russian media before this agreement, they said that Gazprom will lose in numbers, in figures, and that's what they meant. But I would like to offer you to take a look at what Ukrainian media say. Later on in our Marathon Transit 2020, we are going to do the fresh overview of the international media, but now let us talk about the Russian media. What details do they know? Because during the negotiations, first of all, the Russian media have been faster than Ukrainian media. They've had this information first. So, negotiations between the Transit, the Prime Minister of Russia, Medvedev, has said that now all of the claims have been taken down. Specifically, I quote, the gas contract for the next 5 years is a compromise that should have been found. The transit of Ukrainian gas throughout Ukraine will continue under the condition that is good and acceptable for both sides. The agreements say that Russia and Ukraine have found the common language and can find the best negotiations. I don't want to draw you to the political expertise, but even in the hardest questions or only in the questions of the energy and gas, Ukraine can find the best common language. Well, I can see a little bit of over-optimism in what the Russian Premier has said. Why? Because not of all of our mutual claims have been stopped. We have the process on Chornomor Naftogaz that hasn't been taken down. We have a lot of other judicial processes because of the expropriation of the property during the annexation of Crimea, and all of those processes are in the international courts and they're being continued. No one has taken them down. So Mr. Medvedev is actually hinting that we can find a settlement in all of the other questions. Or no, I'm not a political person. I'm not a person really good aware about the political processes, but I understand in any kind of energy questions you might find settlements. Yes, well, like you can pay additional fines, you can pay for those properties that you have stolen or just like return the property to us, so you can find some conditions to settlements. So we quoted Lentaru, now RBK Russia. They say that between the relationship between Ukraine and Russia on gas, now we have the warm weather coming up. So Gazprom has fulfilled the ruling of the Stockholm Tribunal, and for Gazprom it means that the long-lasting judicial courts, the frozen actives in the banks are going to stop, and they also quote Alexei Miller, the head of Gazprom, who emphasized that the sides have signed up the full scale of contracts and agreements that will help to balance the interests and will help continue the transmission of gas through the territory of Ukraine after 2019. So RBK Russia only quotes the facts. Yeah, well, those are the right facts. And let us consider a very simple thing. Russia has lost more than $400 million just because they haven't paid the Stockholm Tribunal fines at the moment that has been set. Those are just the fines that have been calculated for Gazprom. Well, just economically, the person who would be responsible for losing $400 million, well, there is a big state-owned company, so I do believe that this person would already has been given that additional, would be questioned by the General Prosecutor prosecutor's office. I don't know whether they will do that, whether they will look for someone person who's responsible for losing $400 million just because they were not really fast to react. Well, that's how it looks like now. I would like to remind the people who are watching the marathon, Transit 2020, we're working live. We have Tatiana Goncharova and Alexander Harchenko today with you. In 10 minutes, we will have the briefing of the head of Naftogaz, Andriy Kobolev, and we will break our conversation, and you will be able to watch this briefing live. But I would like to be back to the Russian media. And what do we write? Russian new newspaper, they say, Novaya Gazeta, they say that for the very first time Gazprom has signed the agreement on European principles, pump or pay. And they give a bit of reasons that, first of all, the settlements with Russia, they give the opportunity to Russia to use the cheapest gas corridor throughout the territory of Ukraine. We agree with that. And Ukraine and Naftogaz taking down the settlements in their judicial courses for about 7,400,000 million. So we cannot also doubt that. Kiev has taken some of the tribunals, and we do not know what the tribunals would give us. Well, you know, it means that we're kind of taking down our claims, that we are trying of threatening to the people that we might do something. I do believe that in this case, in this agreement, Ukraine has used all of our stronger sides and just given not sure, not evident results in courts for the money that we will have after the transit war starts. So I actually support the position of our negotiators because it's really hard for us to say something against it. And the third reason for the Novaya Gazeta is that this settlement demonstrate for the international partners that Russia is a good partner in negotiations. Thus, the international isolation of Russia after annexation of Crimea and war on Donbass will stop. Gradually will stop. So we are on air. Transit 2020 marathon. Now Andriy Kobolev is here. We'll have the briefing right now, and later on we might continue the conversation with the head of the energy research, and we will have additional experts joining us.
еще оказывается самая лучшая заставка. Да, она везде локальная вообще. Близ от
Сфокусировался хорошо, когда одинаковость. А когда сзади...
Взял бумажечку, блокнотик, подошел туда, белым балансироваться. Вот так, да, потому что кто вы знаете, сейчас начнем гулять. Нормально?
В автоматическом там нормально, похоже.
Хотя, когда приезжал Джон, дракон, лицо, мастер, десятикратный чемпион по кикбоксингу, гостиницы снимали. Поставили за ним баннер красный. И он на этом красном молодости.
Понимаешь, если
Я
еще...
балансировался по белому листу. У меня все фотографии желтые, ничего не надо. Поставил автомат, все.
Есть же еще этот эффект реплики. Знаешь. Ну просто вот какой цвет он отражает свой. Ну то есть, условно, если возле зеленого фона поставить белого чека, он будет зеленый.
А можна? Все. Дякую.
Вітаємо всіх присутніх. Ми дякуємо, що ви 31 числа
We're pleased to
прийшли
welcome
сюди,
everyone
що
here. We're really
вас
grateful for you
турбують
for being
деталі
here
пригоди
on the
між Україною
31st
і
December.
Росією.
And we're really
Вітаємо
pleased
Андрія
that you're
Коболєва,
interested in the
очільника
details of the
«Нафтогазу».
agreement
Просто
between
зараз
Russia and
ви
Ukraine. You
почуєте
have
всі
Andriy
деталі цієї
Kobolev,
угоди.
the CEO of Naftogaz, and you will hear
Андрію,
all of the main
доброго дня.
details of the
Як ви
agreement from him.
оцінюєте
Andriy,
угоду?
good day.
Будь
How
ласка,
do you
озвучте деталі
assess the
публічного
agreement? Give us a bit of
простору,
details
якої
because in
угоди
public space we haven't seen the agreement yet.
Підписано декілька.
So we had a couple of agreements signed, and basically the marathon on completing
Всього пакету договірних
the
відносин,
full
які
package
необхідні
of
для
all
того,
of the
щоб
agreements that were needed in order to
складування
organize the
газу території
transport
України,
through the
транскордонних,
territory of
в першу
Ukraine,
чергу,
transporter transportation,
Наразі
is not
представник
finished yet.
нового незалежного
Currently, the
оператора
representative of the new
ОГТС,
independent
як ми його
operator
називаємо,
of the
знаходиться
GTS of
в
Ukraine, as we
Брюсселі і
call it, the
повинен закінчити
OGTS, they are
підписання
now
угоди
in
з
Brussels
словацьким
and they
оператором
have to finalize the
Коли це буде
Ustream
закінчено, сподіваюся,
agreement, the agreement with the
буквально
Slovak operator
за
of
декілька
Ustream.
хвилин.
I do hope it will
Тоді
happen in
можемо
a couple of
говорити, що весь
minutes,
пакет
and
повністю
then we will
підписаний.
be able to say that the full package of the agreement has been completed and finalized. In Vienna, the main agreements have been signed between Ukrainian and Russian sides, and I cannot tell you clearly, I cannot comment yet everything that is connected on the agreement concerning the Anti-Monopoly Antitrust Committee, but when we're speaking about the agreements between Naftogaz and Gazprom, I can provide you comments about that. First of all, I will tell you straight away that we have signed the package agreement, so we call this a compromise. This is very acceptable compromise for us that is, in some sides, is good for both of the sides. But the compromise presupposes that both of the sides are winning and giving something away. So Ukrainian side has given something and the Russian side has given something. So let us talk about what Ukrainian side is given and what Russian side is losing. I do hope that this agreement will be the win-win agreement for everyone, that we will be able to gain something from the both sides. And I do hope that this agreement will be the beginning of the win-win relationship, when everyone is satisfied and everyone will have some gainings. Because if you're constantly losing, then those constructions and agreements are not sustainable. But the very important things for what Ukrainian side has gained. We haven't exchanged the covering of debts on the very first tribunal, Stockholm Tribunal, which is $2.9 billion, and to forget about the next tribunals that has been offered from the very beginning. But we take 2.9 billion from the negotiation table. It's basically what has happened, because we have this amount of money paid to Naftogaz before the negotiation, which was a very positive sign for us. I was really surprised with that. Up till the last moment, I was doubting whether this part of the process will be settled in this way. So we received the money. What we have exchanged, there was the new transit agreement. The new transit agreement was exchanged for the new Stockholm Tribunal. That has been just recently filed, and this year, as an addition to the documents that we have already filed to Stockholm, to arbitral Stockholm Term Tribunal, as the answer to the claim by Gazprom, we have given the amount of money, the figure of almost $12 billion. Well, basically, this new tribunal court we have exchanged for the transit agreements. This was the tactics and the strategy that Naftogaz team has had for a couple couple of recent years. So basically, as fast as the nature of this arbitral court was the lack of desire of Russian Federation to use our system, and Gazprom has agreed to use our system, then we are taking down our claim. This is our main things that we have given up. Can you please tell us, you have doubt that Gazprom will pay the amount of money for the first Stockholm tribunal. Do you have doubts that Russia will follow these agreements, that they will not violate the agreement that has been signed? Because we have the previous history of the previous gas wars. You know, everything can happen. It's life. It depends. No one will give you this guarantee on any counterparty, any counteragent that you're dealing with. But what is important? The new transit agreement. First of all, it has been done according to European rules, according to European law. It has the very specific guarantees that are very close to the concept ship or pay. That is why $7.2 billion, the figure that has been voiced out, well, this is kind of the guaranteed amount of money for the profit of the Ukrainian party, for Ukrainian side, that Ukraine will receive in the framework of the next 5 years. This amount of money might be higher, and we hope it will be bigger, it will be higher, because we're speaking about the minimum volume of gas that Gazprom has guaranteed. And if they will export more gas through Ukrainian system, then they will export on the higher rates. They will be either booking on daily, quarterly, or annually basis. I would like to ask you to emphasize this, because when Mr. Zelensky, the President Zelensky, has said that in 5 years we will receive 7 billion, for those people who have really been connected to this topic, they had really questions why we're talking about this number, whether this figure is too small. Now, no, this is the minimum booked volume. So this is the minimum booked volume of the gas to be transported throughout Ukraine. So this amount, this figure can change. There might be additional volumes, but they will come throughout the process of transit. So the figure might grow. Yes, the figure might grow. It might not be lower, but it might grow. So we're speaking about the guaranteed number, the guaranteed figure that has been approved by the contract, it has been supported by the contract, this contract is compliant to European law. So from the point of view of the gas traders, that this is a very good amount of money. Can you please also explain another moment? I really want to ask you, and I'm going to be asking all of the journalists. We're live on air. I would like to address all of our audience. So all of the questions you can write to us. This is briefing by Andriy Kobolev, the head of Naftogaz. And in some moment, you also will be able to ask all of the questions if you have. You will ask your questions and will introduce yourself. But before that, I really have to ask you about the political part in that, even though it's basically might not be a direct question for you, but they say that the gas question is tightly connected to the political issues. But as far as I understand, it hasn't been mentioned throughout these 4 days negotiations in Vienna, and we will just learn soon whether there was a specific package with the political issues with Russia. You know, I cannot comment the political issues. This is for politicians to do. Okay, thank you. So can you please tell us why this agreement hasn't been signed between the operator of the gas transmitting system of Ukraine, but why the agreement has been signed between Gazprom and Naftogaz, the 2 main actors? Thank you for this question. Yes, that is definitely a non-standard, non-conventional moment, and also was unexpected for us, because throughout this year, Naftogaz team has done a lot. Well, not even in a year, for the recent half a year, together with the government, we have approved, after long discussions with the previous governments that wasn't really constructive, but with the new government we have approved a new plan for the Naftogaz unbundling, which really gives us the opportunity to get certification, to be certified, and starting from January 1st, the new company and the new operator will be working in full capacity. And I'm really grateful to all of the people connected to that, and the people in Parliament who helped approve the laws that we needed, for the new regulators that approved the new tariffs, and a lot of other people involved. But we've managed to cure this problem, and we managed to do a lot of things that were important for us. But legislation-wise and the regulatory acts concerning the legislation and the regulatory act that regulate the natural gas market, we haven't reached yet full compliance with European law. And Gazprom is aware of that, and Naftogaz has spoken about it also before. And the position of Gazprom is quite predictable. They were not ready to cover the risks of ineffective Ukrainian legislation. And that is why these risks are going to be covered by Naftogaz. So Naftogaz is going to be kind of a buffer between Gazprom and Ukraine. Those risks in Ukrainian legislation is something that we are dealing with. We are not really satisfied, not really very happy with this option, but this is the compromise that I call a compromise. So this is a compromising decision for us. So for us, it's very important, as for a country, to continue the reform of the market of natural gas, to complete the reform and to cure all of the problems that we still have in the market. And I will just mention a simple example. The unsanctioned extraction. So we have a lot of like $1 billion of the unsanctioned, unauthorized extraction. And this problem has been mostly covered by Naftogaz capacities. You know, we cannot work like that further on, and we have to change it in some way in the closest time. And I also want to mention something that might be also interesting to a lot of people to know. We have a clear division of the profits and income between the operator of GTS and Naftogaz. So the biggest part of income is going to be given to operator of gas transmission system. So yes, there will be paid to the operator. The difference between the income for the operator and Naftogaz is really minimal, and it's less than 10% for the Naftogaz. The final question that I want to ask, and then we will give the opportunity for the journalists to ask their questions, but why the unbundling happened this year? Because we have been waiting for this unbundling for quite a long time. The European community has been waiting for the unbundling for a long time. So why Naftogaz has managed to win in the Stockholm Tribunal? I'm not going to ask you the political question why in other spheres and in other spheres we're not ready to reach this kind of victories, but can you please explain? That's not a PR question, but I'm really interested in that. I'm talking to different experts. I really want to understand why it became possible now. Well, we have to say that unbundling, it was really impossible to finalize the unbundling till the end of this year, because this is the final day for work for the previous transit contract. So what happened this year? We managed to approve the action plan for the 31st of December of 2019 could actually and caused the unbundling. So it's not a secret for anyone. We had very hard and heated discussions with the previous government on how to do the unbundling in the right way, of why should we preserve the economical ties between Naftogaz and the future operator or the owners of both of the companies. This is something that we have preserved. Why it is critically important to preserve the new Stockholm claim that we've made. So basically, well, these are those conditions, those explanations, those understandings of the fact they caused the positive results for us. Why we are now winning in the gas direction. I do believe there's a lot of different factors coming together, but I would like to emphasize one very important, this is the teamwork. Teamwork and unified integrity actions for the people who understand what they're doing, following the strategy. We have the strategy, we have the desire to be courageous, to be open, and to be just. And I do believe that, in my opinion, this is the main reason for the success. Even though that sometimes it causes some of the conflicts, some of the discussions, but if people have the joint strategical aim and goal, then there is a big opportunity for success. Thank you for your answer. We have Andrei Kobolev, who represents the team of Naftogaz. Please come up to the microphone, introduce yourself, and give the questions. Andrei Gavric, the first page, and I have the question as follows. Next year, what is going to be the volume of gas that will be transferred through Ukraine by Russia? If the Nord Stream is going to be finalized, and whether it will be finalized till the end of year or no, in your understanding, and what are the perspectives by the end of the year about transit? Your forecasts. I do believe that next year Nord Stream 2 will not be used fully. Really hard for me to command the technological progress of Russian Federation in this case, but according to information that I have, the Russian Federation currently does not have the vessel that will construct Nord Stream 2, finalize Nord Stream 2. If those assumptions are true, then in this case, I would say that the volume of transit through Ukrainian territory would be around 75 billion cubic meter. Why 75? I can explain you clearly. The current transit is around 90 billion, so we will definitely use around 15 billion for the Turk stream, so we will living around 75. So I would expect the transit to be this level. Yuri Deshato, Ukrainian news, so please come up to the mic and good day, Yuri Deshato of Ukrainian news. It's really pity that we don't have the press conference for the people who are actually getting prepared this all of those contracts. But the question for you, Andriy, can you please tell us about the tariffs? Why it happened like that? That even though the volume of transit has decreased by 2, the tariff is more or less the same on the same level. Whether you presuppose that the contract, the conditions in the contract will be reviewed throughout these 5 years, and especially the tariffs and the volumes, and what jurisdiction will be, what jurisdiction will be used for the claims, if there will be some claims or disputes, and in case if one of the sides will not fulfill the conditions, whether they be able to take down, to get back to the claims that we have taken down, to take back the settlements that Gazprom and Naftogaz have signed up. I'll have a couple of more questions. If I'll have the time, I will just add up to that. Taking back the settlements, it's not going to happen. So basically, it's a reversible settlement that we're having. So I do hope that if we'll have some new potential conflict situation, then we'll be once again disputed in the arbitrage. According to the new contract, speaking on the new tariffs, the tariffs have been settled by the Ukrainian regulator based on European rules. Based on European rules, the tariffs have been calculated. The tariff for the guaranteed volumes, this tariff is going to stay the same for the guaranteed amount of gas, for the guaranteed volumes of gas. The tariffs between Gazprom and Naftogaz has been calculated as the tariffs of Ukrainian regulator with additional marginal levels to that, with additional commissions. So basically, the basic level, the baseline for calculation, what the tariffs has been set by Ukrainian regulator. Well, Yuri, you can continue because you believe that you're the only one person in Ukraine who's really good in the Swiss right. Yeah, the Sweden right. Lesa Holovato of Channel 5. So for many times you have already said that we can continue in negotiating for a very long time the transit because the storages are full, that we have a lot of gas in our storages, and a lot of experts have evaluated that not as a victory, but as some kind of giving up from Ukraine, because based on the sanctions of the United States of America that stopped the construction of Nord Stream 2, we have additional opportunities because of the additional appeal that goes from the antitrust committee. Can you explain us about the tariffs? Why the tariffs have not been increased? And can you please explain why do we have the volume that has been decreased almost by 2? I have just explained your colleague how do we set the tariffs, so I have nothing basically to add. Speaking on the volumes of the gas transit, this is the minimum gas transit volume. They might be higher, they might be bigger. We have to understand that according to European rule, we cannot pursue negotiation of the higher level of volume. We, like any shipper, then we cannot demand that you have to transit like 10, 100, 200 billion. We can give you the tariff line, and the shipper can choose based on the tariffs. The Gazprom has chosen this minimal amount, the minimum volume of the transit. That's how they see their situation. If we didn't have this, if we got up to this situation without the contractless situation, if we got to the situation where we don't have this agreement and we don't have this regulated package, then Gazprom would also be able to come to us and, for example, to book 5 billion cubic meters of gas for January. And unless you're not using Ukrainian sanction, you cannot refuse them. So basically, this is the rule. So, of course, there are some steps back in our packages, and that's why I've started this briefing with saying that this was a compromise. The compromise is basically means that both of the sides are giving up something. So, yes, of course, there were some compromise moments from Ukrainian side also. But speaking on the victory and the winning moments from Ukraine, I believe that regulating the situation and settling the situation will be the victory for both the consumers of Ukraine and Europe. Because if we didn't have the final regulations to that, and we would draw back to crisis, like, yes, of course, we have been prepared to the crisis, but that would be really causing the increasing of the price for gas, well, at least for the short winter period. So concerning this, for European region, for Ukraine, the stability will have really big positive impact. Andre, you've mentioned the compromise once again, but if not speaking about the compromises, then speaking about the life cycle of the gas transport system, in an ideal way, how much gas should we transmit in order for us to keep the system alive? The calculation that has been provided by our Energy Council and those tariffs that have been set, they're making the Ukrainian GTS activity for at least the next 5 years. Thank you. Yuri Deshchatov, once again, the monopolist of today's questions. I'm really interested how it is being said in the contract with the connections on either pump and pay. So basically, we have signed this contract according to the protocol. When should we expect the negotiation on the opportunities of procuring direct gas procuring from Gazprom? I can't quote the elements of contract because it's confidential, but the level of the guarantees from the Gazprom side, we believe that is a very high level of guarantees. That's much better, much higher than in the previous contracts. On importing gas and direct negotiations, it's hard for me to forecast or predict something about that, and I do believe that it's a very intensive and really heated discussion inside of Ukrainian government in a broader political spheres and circles, and I do believe after we'll have this discussion closed, we will get back to it. Currently, Naftogaz is not in direct negotiations on the buying gas with Gazprom. And another moment, Russia has voiced out the situation that Russia is ready to participate, if there's going to be the situation, that Russia is going to is ready to participate in modernizing Ukrainian GTS. Whether this question has been discussed, whether it's possible and under what conditions, under what circumstances it is possible for Russia to participate in modernizing Ukrainian GTS. Well, I believe that there is very small probability of this kind of scenario. The financial profits of the new operator of the GTS and their opportunities to engage some additional loans and money, that will be quite enough in the part that the modernization will be needed. Thus, I do not expect this moment. I do not expect Russia to participate in modernization of Ukrainian GTS. Please, you're welcome.
Excuse me, if I may, a question in English.
Sure.
I'm Tom O'Donnell from the U.S. It seems obvious that the fact that sanctions were put on Nord Stream 2 had a big influence on the Russian thinking and calculations in this process. I know from my country, Mr. Trump really did not want to do this. This is something that was basically forced. You don't have to comment on this part. Basically forced upon him by the American Senate. However, do you think people, of course, ask you, is there a chance that that Russia could itself technically is capable of finishing the pipeline by the end of the year, as they're saying? And number two, it's pointed out that in these sanctions, it's possible to get an exemption to have the sanctions lifted if they make transit through Ukraine only, or through any country, drop only by 25% a year. So dropping from about 87 BCM now to 65 keeps them within that window. So there is a question that this was part of the Russian intention. Is it clear?
I'm not fully aware of all mechanics of US sanctions, so unfortunately I can't comment whether it can be lifted or not. What I'm more or less aware of is that current technical capacities of Russian side, as far as I know, do not allow them to finish this pipeline in the nearest future. They need one of the foreign vessels. And since those vessels we expect will not be available, as long as they are not available, they will not be able to accomplish Nord Stream 2.
If I may, you don't think they can upgrade, they're claiming they could upgrade the vessel that's now presently in the east near the Japan Sea, that they'd like to upgrade this vessel. You don't think this is possible?
Have you seen the video of Russian best air carrier crossing English Channel?
And the tugboat, yes.
Yeah, so I guess that answers your question.
Дякуємо, Томасе. Будь ласка, питання, піднімали руку. Вставайте,
Thomas,
будь
we
ласка,
had additional
представляйтеся.
questions. Please introduce yourself and have your question,
Я
please.
Жигулев, агентство Рейтер. Вот вы говорили, что
Reuters agency, so you have said
основные договоренности
that
были
the main
достигнуты уже
negotiations have been
20
already
декабря.
closed on the 20th of December,
Мы все ждали вчера
because
до
we have been all
полуночи,
waiting
да.
till midnight
Интересно, собственно
yesterday
говоря,
and
почему
to get the final
так
result. It's quite
долго
interesting for us to know
шли
why it took
дискуссии,
so
да, и,
long for
собственно
additional
говоря,
technical
какой был
discussions and
основной спорный
what
момент,
was
были
the
разные
most
слухи, в том числе
moments,
по
because
поводу
there were like
Словакии.
different
Могли
moments,
бы вы
speaking like, for
рассказать,
example, the
собственно,
main
что
burden
происходило
was about
последние
Slovakia.
дни,
Can you
почему
tell us about what
после
has happened in the
20-го,
recent
где вы
days? Why
сказали,
after the
что
20th of
основные
December, when you
договоренности
said that the
достигнуты,
main
до
preliminary agreement has
31-го,
been
что
already set,
происходило? Был ли
till the
какой-то
31st of December, what
неожиданный,
was going on? Was there some
случилась
kind
ли
of
какая-то неожиданность?
unexpected turn of events? What were the
Відбувалась важка
unexpected things
технічна
that happened?
робота з
It
підписання
was
самих
the really
угод.
hard
Кожна
technical
угода –
work
це
on
основний
signing
документ, в
the
якому треба
agreement. So every
передбачити
agreement is basically the main
гарантії,
document,
інші
the
речі.
founding
Що
document
стосується
that has
Словаччини,
to
це
include
абсолютно інше питання.
guarantees and other
Воно не
things.
було предметом
Speaking
цих
on
перемовин.
Slovakia,
Це
Slovakia
стара
was
окрема
not the
історія,
subject for
яка
negotiations
полягає в
here.
тому, що
This is
є
an
дві
old
станції
story that
вимірювання обсягів
really says
газу,
that we have
одна з
two
українського боку,
calculating
інша з
stations,
словацького
one from
боку. Я
Ukrainian
завжди
side, the other
коментував,
from
публічно говорив, що дві
Slovakia's side,
станції
and
– це
I've
завжди
always said
проблема,
that these two
дві станції
stations is
завжди
always a
демонструють
problem, two
різні
stations, they
значення.
will
Ось
always show
наразі
different
команда
figures,
оператора та
and
команда
currently the
Юстріма
team of the operators
вирішують,
and
як
the
врегулювати
Stream
це питання.
teams
Але це
are
було
now
за
trying
межами
to settle
перемовин.
and regulate this question, but it was outside of the negotiations
Будь
in
ласка,
Vienna.
підходьте, будь ласка, до мікрофону.
Please, yeah, come up to the mic, please.
Міжнародна агенція Bloomberg,
International
Володимир
agency
Любяний.
Bloomberg,
Мене запитання,
Volodymyr
можливо,
Lubiany,
буде
maybe
дещо
my
наївним,
question will be slightly
але чи могли б
naive,
все-таки ви
but can you
сказати,
please tell
наскільки
us
виростає тариф на транзит газу?
how much the tariff on gas transit will increase?
Для «Газпрому»
For
тариф
Gazprom,
газу
the tariff for the gas transit
майже не змінюється.
basically is
на
not
гарантовані
changing.
обсяги.
For the
На
guaranteed
обсяги,
for
які вони
volumes, for the
будуть
guaranteed
замовляти
volumes, for
на
the
додаток
volumes
до
that
цього,
they
він
will
буде більший.
book.
А наскільки
In addition to that, it will be higher.
Це буде залежати
How
від
much higher?
рішень
It will
оператора,
depend on the
регулятора,
operator, on the
а цифру
regulators,
закладу в наш
regulators'
контракт
decision.
з «Газпромом» я
In
коментувати не
I
можу, вона
cannot comment
конфіденційна.
upon the number that has been set in our contract. It's confidential.
Будь ласка, ще питання.
Thank
Хочу
you.
ще раз
Thank you. More
звернутися до тих,
questions,
хто
please.
нас
I would
дивиться
like to
зараз
once
в
again
прямому
to
ефірі,
tell
що
the
у нас
people who
триває
are now
марафон
watching us
«Транзит
live. We're still on Marathon Transit 2020. We're giving you the details of the transit agreement between Ukraine and Russia. Andrei Kobalyev, the head of Naftogaz, is now answering the questions from Ukrainian journalists. I would like to have a clarification question. These 3%, they will be calculated from 256 on transits. What kind of percent? The Naftogaz share for the operation.
«Нафтогаз» буде
No,
отримувати
Naftogaz
дохід.
will receive additional
І від
income,
цього доходу
and out
вони
of this
за тарифом,
income,
який встановлює
based on the
український
tariff that
регулятор,
has been set
будуть
by
сплачувати
Ukrainian
суму
regulator, they
оператору
will
ГТС.
pay additional
Різниця
specific
залишається
money
«Нафтогаз».
for the operator. So the difference will be staying
Я
in
не хочу
Naftogaz.
називати
It will
точну
be
цифру,
right
вона є
and out
конфіденційною,
30%.
тому я би
No, that won't be this.
стримався
I
від
cannot
цього. Але
comment upon that
важливий
figure.
момент, що
That's a confidential number, but
ця
I
угода
will
свою щоб ви
restrain from
зрозуміли
that.
більш в
But
повній
this
мірі,
agreement,
вона,
just for you to fully understand that this
мабуть,
agreement is
найближче
basically
до агентської угоди.
the closest
Так було
to
б найбільш
the
правильно сказати.
agent-based agreement. That would be the best way to say. The question on Slovakia, we're not demanding we're not demanding to take down
Ми
their agreement
вимагаємо
with Gazprom
впровадження
till
європейських правил
2029.
на
Now,
точці
what we
під'єднання
demand, that we
України
would like to
Словаччини.
have the
Головним
European rules on
елементом
our connecting point
перемоги
between
тут,
Ukraine
це
and
точно
Slovakia.
перемога,
The most
це
important
усунення
moment here as
«Газпрому»
our
між
victory that
Ужгородом
we
і
are taking down
Великопошани як
Gazprom from
супероператора.
Uzhgorod and
Це те, над чим ми
Velkopolshany as
билися
a
останні
super
5 років,
later, that is something that we fought for 5 years, and we managed to reach this now, because there was also some limitations from our side also. So I do believe that currently, when all of the questions on calculating the gas will be set, it will be really big breakthrough. That will mean that all of the connecting points with the European Union, we will have the European rules in action, which also presuppose, for example, virtual reverse. The Gazprom has to approve this changes or not. I don't know all of the aspects, and I don't know all of the aspects between Newstream and Gazprom, because their relationships are also confidential, so I cannot comment upon that. I don't know all details from their side. From our side, no, it's not demanded. From their side, I do not know. And on transit, you've said that after the transit agreement, you will announce the program on increasing the extraction. That will be done slightly later. We would like to discuss the story publicly in January. After will all of the emotions will set back from all of the previous story about the agreements. Thank you. If sticking to the final question on extraction of Ukrainian gas, with the previous government has a constant conflict with the previous heads of Naftogaz. What is going on right now with you? Because I'm having this question because the politicians that I'm talking every day, they're speculating on this topic very daily. They say that our own domestic extraction is enough for Ukraine. So we have to actually always have to remind what is our domestic extraction and why do we need it for. Well, first of all, I believe that the politicians should take a look at what is overall capacities of the natural gas owned by private company and how much, what is the volume that they extract and what Naftogaz extracts. We had a huge disproportion with that. The disproportion is because of the recent years, it's not the secret, most of the licenses and the special approvers permits have been provided to private companies but have not been provided to Naftogaz. We have been really discussing it for quite a long time, and we have always said that in order for us to have good extraction, we need the new high-quality licenses. We cannot extract more from the old outdated sources that we already have used by 90%, especially with the new gas prices. And by the way, this new agreement will definitely influence the prices on gas. In the lower side, the prices will decrease. Ukrainian market is a part of the European market, then thus European market prices will decrease, thus the Ukrainian market prices will decrease. It will make the extraction of the natural gas in the European Union even harder on the economical rationale. They have to find the new sources and the new well that will be based on the economical calculations. Extraction of gas is basically a very capital-intensive sphere. It really requires really expensive technologies to use. Ukrainian wells are around 6 kilometers deep. It costs a lot, and in order to make it profitable, you have to do that in a high-quality way. You have to receive all of the money from the market, and not like Naftogaz receives right now. There's many things you have to include and you have to improve in order to increase the gas extraction. So in order to do that, you should not only create additional conditions, but you have to create transparent and just conditions, and that's what Naftogaz was fighting for. I will give you an example. 2019, 2018, there was March. I was in a hospital. I had a trauma, and the head of the UGV calls me and says, like, Kobolev, all of our licenses are taken down. And they say, like, they say that they've introduced the new rules on evaluating the influence for the environment. It is impossible to pass these rules because the government has not approved the procedure. Now, no one has passed, but all of our main licenses are going to be now taken away from us. And we only managed to stop that because our supervisory board has engaged into the situation. With this kind of approach, if private companies are not increasing their gas extraction, then we cannot do it also. So we have an open and clear position in this question. We really want to have the high-quality, direct dialogue with what has happened before, what were the factors that have been preventing us from the further development, what are the problems inside of Naftogaz, what are the problems outside of Naftogaz. We have never said we are the ideal ones. We understand there are some of the things we have to deal with inside of the company. Currently, the transformation of the Naftogaz Group
призвела до
has
багатьох
already
дуже
caused
позитивних
some
наслідків
really
і
good
позитивних
positive
прикладів. Ці
changes and
приклади ось тільки
positive
зараз
success
пішли в
stories.
роботу,
And those
і зараз ми
examples are
почали
now
буріння тих
being
свердловин,
processed,
тих
and we started
перспективних
to
проєктів,
develop
які
those
дійсно можуть
resources
стати
and those
базою
wells
до
and creating
зростання
those
власного
projects that
видобутку
will
газу
be the
державної
basis for
компанії.
increasing our own extraction for the state-owned company. When you're speaking about the success stories, like for example with Andrei Favorov, we have discussed it before, the
Вона є позитивним
888
прикладом
well. Well, maybe other question.
технічного,
Yeah, this is a good
якісного
example
буріння.
of high
І це дійсно
technological
новий якісний
drilling,
рівень
and it's the
того,
new
як ми
high
будемо підходити до
level
цієї
of
свердловини.
what
Просто на
approaches
цьому
we're going to
родовищі
take to those wells.
десь
Because
15
in
років
this
тому
source we
спробували
have
пробурити 11 свердловин,
we
і
have
всі вони були
tried
аварійними.
to have
Жодну з
11
них не
drills
запустили в
before that,
виробництво.
11
Ця
wells, but we
свердловина
didn't put
на
them into
технічному
action
рівні
into the process.
є
This well
якісним кроком
now is
вперед.
a high
Чи буде
quality
вона
step
успішною з
forward.
точки зору
Whether it will
геології,
be
це ми
successful
побачимо.
in concerns of geology, we will just see that in future. Do we have any more questions? Please step up towards the microphone.
Кілька запитань.
Couple of more questions left from my side. Recently, the Ukrainian media have reported that 5 companies have already had their agreements with Gazprom to buy gas, to procure gas. Can you also comment on this information? Maybe you can name the companies and tell us about what is the scheme that they will be buying gas, how will they receive it, how will they
Я не
process it.
володію достовірною інформацією
have
про те,
the-
що є якісь
I do
компанії,
not
які
have the
підписали такі угоди, і тим більше
legitimate
не знаю
information
їх
that we have
назв
the
чи умов
companies
цих
that have
угод.
signed this agreement
Що я
and I
можу
don't know the titles of
прокоментувати,
these
що
companies and the
підписавши
conditions of
з
these agreements.
Газпромом
What I can comment
договори на
that when you're
приєднання
signing
на
up
точках між
the
Україною та
agreement, the
Росією,
connecting agreements with
теоретично
Gazprom are the connecting
будь-яка
points
компанія
between
з
Russia and Ukraine.
Федерації
So any
може звернутися
company
до
in
нового
Russian
незалежного
Federation
оператора
can
напряму,
basically turn
забронювати
to
потужності
the new operator
і почати
directly
продавати
to
газ
book
з
the
Російської
capacities
Федерації
and starting
якомусь українському
selling
споживачу.
gas from Russian
Це не
Federation to
заборонено.
any
Така
Ukrainian
можливість існує. Для
consumer.
цього є
That's not
тарифи.
forbidden.
Вони
There
обирають
is this
тариф,
opportunity,
період
they're
і
choosing
можуть
the
за ним
tariffs, the
працювати.
period, and they
Тому
can work with
теоретично
that.
ми
So
можемо побачити
basically,
такі компанії,
theoretically,
які
we
прийдуть
can
найближчим
see some
часом
of
і
the
спробують
companies that in
постачати.
the recent times
Про
will
бажання
try
це
to
робити з 1
supply
січня
Russian
мені
gas
поки
to
що не
Ukraine.
відомо.
From the desires to do
Яка
that
буде
from the 1st of
реакція
January, I'm not aware of
української
that
влади?
yet. I
Чи
don't
вважають
know
вони
what
це
will be the
прийнятним?
reaction of
Чи будуть
Ukrainian
застосовані
government, whether they
санкції?
believe that's
Чи будуть направлені
acceptable,
певні обмеження?
whether they will
Цього я
be
поки що не
some of
знаю.
the limitations. I'm not sure about that yet. Any more questions, please?
Alexei
Gorov from Interfax Ukraine. Under the agreements have under the sealed agreement, can you please tell us?
к управлению газотранспортной системой Украины какого-то иностранного инвестора.
Maybe we can engage some international investors for
Справа
the
не в
managing
контрактах.
of the
Я
Ukrainian GTS.
можу оцінити і без
You
контрактів.
know, it's not
Вона
about the
нульова.
contract, so
Тому що
there's like
український
zero
парламент через популізм певних політиків
opportunities to
фактично
engage
заборонив
in
це робити.
international investment
Вони
because
фактично закрили
Ukrainian
двері.
politicians, because of the
І
populism
я хочу
of
сказати, що
Ukrainian
якби цього не було
politicians,
зроблено,
have
можливо,
closed the door to
і ці
international
контракти
investors.
виглядали кращими.
I do believe that
Тому тут проблема не
maybe
в
if we
контрактах,
haven't
тут
done
проблема в
that,
українських
then
політиках,
our contracts
які
will be
повинні
even better.
зрозуміти,
So
що
there is the
український
question
ГТС
for
це
the Ukrainian
інвестиційний об'єкт,
politicians who have to
і
understand that
прагматичні
Ukrainian
причини,
GTS as a
які
business,
вигідні Україні,
business
вигідні
infrastructure
українським
objects,
людям,
and there
диктують
are
необхідність
reasons
цю
that
можливість
are really
повернути.
good for Ukrainian people and Ukraine. They give us the opportunity to turn this opportunity to get international investors back. Can I clarify one another point? Do I understand that the Naftogaz is going to be the organizing and managing company throughout these 5 years of transit, and the situation will not change? The second moment, why the Austrian company hasn't taken the place of Naftogaz and hasn't become the mediator or intermediary in those negotiations? Because as far as we remember in Berlin, this very company has been discussed. And then when the negotiations has taken to Minsk, then we had Naftogaz in these negotiations. And why there was and why Vitrenko has signed the contract throughout the day, and the Russian side has signed this question in the evening. So that's so this is basically the good question,
Що
slightly modified.
стосується періоду,
Speaking
цей
on
період
the
ми не
periods.
очікуємо, що цей
So we do
механізм
not
буде змінено
expect that
протягом
these
5 років.
mechanisms of our work
Ми вважаємо,
under
що він
this
залишиться
contract
таким.
will be changed throughout these 5 years. We
Чому
believe that
австрійці
will stay the same.
відмовилися, не знаю,
Why the
треба питати в них, але
Austrians
я б так
decided
собі
not to participate
попередньо
as
уявив,
mediators or
що вони
intermediaries in this
мали ті ж
agreement?
самі
We have to
сумніви,
ask
що
them,
і
but I
висловлював
believe that they
Газпром.
might have the very
Тому що
same
тоді
doubts
вони
that we
повинні були
had.
брати на себе
Because
український
then
ризик.
they will have to
А що
work with
стосується
the
підписання,
Ukrainian
це
legislation
стандартна
risks.
процедура. Я
But
впевнений,
about
що
signing, this is a
в офісі
standard
Газпрому, як і у
procedure. I'm
нас, є
sure that
юристи,
in Gazprom
є
office, as
спецслужби,
well as
які
we have have their
перевіряють
other
контракти,
services, the
невідповідність
legal
домовленостям,
department, they will
відчитують,
have to read out
і
the
потім тільки дають на
agreements,
підпис.
and
Тому в
later
цьому
on they
нічого
will
дивного я не бачу.
provide it to be
Ну, це
signed by the main
транспортування,
leaders. So,
це
this is the
доступність керівника.
transport, this
Я думаю,
availability
що
of the
контракт,
head of
який було
office, and I
підписано
do believe that the
з
contract that
обох
has been
боків
signed from
протягом
both
одного
parties
календарного дня, це
throughout
цілком
one
прийнятно
calendar
і
day is
адекватно.
quite acceptable and adequate.
Не бачу тут нічого дивного.
Like I see no problems with that.
Доброго дня, Анна Калюжна, 24 канал.
Anna Kalužna,
Питання з
Channel
приводу
24.
цього
The
мирової
question
угоди
on this
антимонопольного
settlement with
комітету
the
і Газпрому
antitrust
також.
committee,
Це
anti-monopoly
не були
committee
якісь
and
міжнародні
Gazprom, so that
позови,
wasn't any
але
kind of
чи
international
це
claims. But
чому антимонопольний комітет
why did it
відмовився від
happen?
цього?
One
Тому що безперспективно було
our antitrust
очікувати, що Росія
anti-monopoly
таки виплатить ці
committee
кошти
has agreed upon that,
172,
so we
здається,
didn't
мільярди
expect
гривень.
that it would be like 172
Чи,
billion of
ну, тобто,
hryvnia
чи
that
є
Gazprom will
причина,
pay. Do you have any reasons
інша в
why?
тому,
Do
що
you have
це
any
було
other reasons
вимогою Росії
why?
знову таки, і чи не
We
забагато
have
тоді
settled
поступок
this, we have
з нашого
settled these
боку,
claims,
якщо
and it was only the demand from Russia. So you do believe that like getting the both claims, and I do believe that Andrei, you will have to now tell us
Давайте
what
відразу
are the
відповім,
pros
я не
and
можу
cons.
сказати, це
Like, you
не
know, first of all,
угода
I
Нафтогазу, ми не є
I
стороною,
cannot speak
ми не
about that.
приймали
This
цього
is
рішення
not
і
the
коментувати
agreement
його
with
просто
Naftogaz.
не
We're
можу.
not deciding this agreement, so I cannot comment upon this, upon anti-monopoly claims.
Майже
Sorry.
задоволені, так?
So you're like almost
Скажіть, будь
satisfied
ласка,
with the
у
answer.
мене ще
Okay.
питання.
Does anyone has any questions more?
Вопрос. По Стокгольму.
On Stockholm, on
Мы уже
Stockholm
полностью
trip, you know,
прекратили это
so we have
обязательство. В
completely
частности, там было
stopped
обязательство
this.
от 4 до 5
So
миллиардов
there
закупок
was
российского газа. Они
from-
поднимали этот вопрос или нет?
From 1 to 4 billions
Всі
that according to the
зустрічні
Stockholm claims.
претензії, які
Like
були в
all of
Газпрому і
the
Нафтогазу.
current claims that have been both from the side of Gazprom and Naftogaz, plus
включно
with
з
additional supplies of
недопоставкою
gas,
по транзиту.
or under supplies or
Включно з
the
вимогами
transit, with
Газпрому
all of the
щодо
demands from
газу, який вони
Gazprom
постачали в
for the
Донецьк і
gas that
Луганськ.
they have
Все це
supplied to
повністю
Donetsk and
обнулено.
Lugansk. All
І
of that has
повертатись до цього
been
жодна з
turned
сторін
to
не має
the
права.
zero. So like
Там
there
повне
has been
закриття,
settled. It's
спільних
completely
претензій відбулося.
closed of all of the
Если
claims.
контракт будет
So we're not going
продолжаться,
to
то
get
есть
back to
за
that.
год
So if
до
the contract
окончания
will
одна
be
из сторон
continued,
должна
so
будет,
by the year before its
предупредить другое
completion, the
продление
side,
или
one
просто
of
на
the sides has to
Це буде
inform the
вимагати
other about the
певних дій сторін.
continuation, prolongation of the contract. No,
И
yes, it
это
will require some
Стокгольм или
actions
какая
from both of the
европейская
sides.
юрисдикция?
So what
Це не можу
European
коментувати.
jurisdiction? I cannot comment upon that. Thank you.
Опишите, пожалуйста,
Can you please describe?
Первые дни и
Can you please
последующие части,
describe
кто
the
будет
first days
бронировать
and the next
мощности
days of
украинской
who's going to
ГТС?
be both
Нафтогаз
booking
и
the
так далее и тому
capacities of
подобное.
Ukrainian
Это будут
GTS?
суточные
Will it be
квартальные и
like
так далее.
Naftogaz or what it will be done
Нафтогаз
on
вже
daily
надав
basis?
заявки на
Naftogaz has already
бронювання
given the
потужності української
applications
ГТС.
for booking the
Це
capacities of
бронювання
Ukrainian
закінчується
GTS. The
протягом
booking
2019
will
року.
end
Я
throughout
точний термін так само
2019. Once
конфіденційний
again,
назвати його не
that's a
хочу.
confidential
Тому
timeline,
у
so I
відносинах
cannot
між оператором
name it. So under the
українського
negotiations,
ГТС
under the
та
relationship
власне
between the
процесом
operator of
транзиту,
Ukrainian GTS and the
клієнтом для
transit
оператора є
process,
Нафтогаз.
Naftogaz is the client for the operator. So
Ми не
Naftogaz
змогли
books
оплатити
the time.
кошти,
We were
тому
not
що угода
able
була
to pay
підписана
money
тільки
because
вчора.
the agreements were
Вчора я
paid only
підписав
yesterday.
гарантійні листи,
Yesterday I have
яким
signed all of
Нафтогаз
these
гарантує
guarantee
оператору
letters.
оплату,
That's Naftogaz
здається, 3 січня
guarantees the
першої
payment for the
порції
operator
коштів
on
за
the
бронювання.
3rd
Тому
of
3 січня
January for
новий
the
оператор
first
отримає
amount of money for the booking of the
суттєвий
capacities.
дохід
So
саме
on
від
the
Нафтогазу.
3rd of January, the new operator will receive the new profit from Naftogaz.
You explained earlier the strategy of Naftogaz for trading the claims that you had pending Stockholm and so forth against for a transit contract. My question is, if the Russian side violates the contract in the coming year or two, can you go back and make those claims again, or are those claims really settled for forever once you signed?
We can't go back. Neither of the sides can go back. The claims were cancelled or revoked, and that's a final. But if there is violation under the new contract has obligations which may become, I hope they won't, may become a subject of new arbitration.
Це останнє питання. Якщо це останнє питання, от
Final
модератор,
question,
будь ласка.
then
Я думаю,
the
я
moderator,
поставлю
please, like I saw that I will be the final question, but we have another question. If it's the final question, just for us to summarize, have we understood it clearly that basically only about the Ukrainian operator to come up with the main conditions with the Slovakian operator, and that is, or we have some additional technical issues to set for the contract to start
Почав
working with
працювати
1st of
контракт з
January.
1 січня
In order
вже
for the
вирішено
contract
все.
to work on the 1st of January,
Питання
everything
відносин між
has
словацьким
covered
оператором
already.
та
The
українським
questions
оператором,
between
воно
negotiating
не
the
завадить
relationship
початку
between the
роботи цього
Slovak
контракту.
operators and Ukrainian
Але з
operators,
точки
they
зору
will not
подальшої роботи,
stop work
я
of
б
this
хотів
contract.
повернутися
But
знову до
on our
питання
further on
умов
work, I
роботи
would like to
українського
get back to
ринку
the question of the
Тут
Ukrainian natural
Нафтогазу
gas
потрібно
markets.
буде з
And
регулятором
Naftogaz
і з
will
новим
need to have a
оператором
discussion with the
найближчим часом
regulator, with the
максимально
new
наблизити
operator. We'll have
умови
to
до
do,
європейських,
we will have
врегулювати
to
декілька
synchronize
дуже
our
критично
conditions with
важливих
European. We will have
невідповідностей.
to regulate
протягом
some
наступного
critical
року, я
discrepancies between
сподіваюся,
Ukrainian and European
відміна
legislations,
ПСО
and I
очікується в
do
цьому
hope that
році.
we'll
Буде
speaking about
багато
the
змін.
PSO taken down.
Тарифи
So
облгазів,
there's
відбору
different,
облгазів,
like the
газбути.
oble
Всі ці
gas,
питання треба
tariffs.
остаточно
We'll all have
врегулювати.
to settle
Ситуація
all
з
of these issues
накопиченням
finally.
боргів,
The situation when
ситуація
we
з
have more
неадекватністю
debts, the
вартості
situation
денного
with the
балансування.
adequate
Все це
daily
не сприяє
balancing.
розвитку
But
ринку.
all of those
Ми дуже
is not
сподіваємося, що
really
в цьому
helping to
році
develop
ми
the natural gas
зможемо
market in
врегулювати
Ukraine.
весь
We
залишок
do
питань.
hope that in future year we'll be able to regulate all of the leftover issues.
I
think I would like to once again clarify the amount of money that Gazprom has paid. What was the account that it has been delivered, whether we'll pay taxes out of it, and what will be happening with
Хочу
this
нагадати, що
amount of money that
сумарно
Gazprom has
Нафтогаз
paid.
отримав від Газпрому 5 мільярдів
Overall,
доларів.
Naftogaz has
2,1
received
мільярда
$5
доларів було
billion
отримано в
from
2016 році
Gazprom.
шляхом заліку за вартість газу.
2.1
Або
that
можна сказати,
was
що вони були
from
отримані газом,
Gazprom that
який ми
have been
спожили
delivered
в
by gas
2014
that we
році.
have used in 2014.
2,9 було отримано
2.9
ось
billions have
перед
been
підписанням
received
цієї
just
угоди.
before the
Вони
agreement has been signed.
поступили на рахунки
That
Нафтогазу,
got to the
знаходяться
Naftogaz
наразі на цих
accounts. They're
рахунках.
currently
Нафтогаз з
allocated
нашим
at
акціонером,
Naftogaz
тобто
accounts,
з урядом,
and
найближчим
Naftogaz,
часом
together with
буде
our
проводити
shareholders, with the
обговорення,
government of
яким
Ukraine,
чином
will
ця
have the
сума
consultations
може
in what way
витрачатись,
this amount
які
of money
побажання
can be
щодо
spent.
дивідендів.
What are
Поки
the
що
questions with
податків
the
з цієї
dividends?
суми
Currently, the
Нафтогаз не
taxation
сплачував.
taxes
Всі
from this amount of
податкові
money hasn't been
відрахування та
paid.
дивіденди,
All of the
які були
dividends and
частково
all of the
проавансовані
taxations that
минулого
have been
року, були проавансовані до
paid in
отримання цієї
advance
суми
were
з коштів
advanced
Нафтогазу,
before
які
we
ми
received the money
накопичили
from
з
the money
іншої
of Naftogaz
діяльності
that we have
до,
allocated from
власне
other
кажучи,
activities
врегулювання відносин з
before
Газпромом. Тобто
the
3 мільярди зараз
relationship with
лежать на
Gazprom has
рахунку
been
і чекають на
settled. So
розмови
the
з
3
акціонерами.
billions are currently at Ukraine at our accounts, and we're waiting for our conversations with our
Правильно понимаю,
shareholders.
что
I would like to clarify it once again.
с учетом подписания
Do we understand it
договоров
clear?
на транзит,
Concerning the
существующих запасов
transit
в КХГ
agreement,
Украины, Нафтогазу,
with
в принципе,
existing
нет смысла
storage
осуществлять
in
импорт на протяжении
Ukraine,
первого
then
квартала или
Naftogaz
каких-то
will not
осуществлять каких-то минимальных
will
объемах.
not import gas in the minimal amounts in the
В
first
нас
quarter of
будуть
2020.
певні обсяги
We
імпорту, тому
will have
що
some
до
volumes
підписання
of
цих угод
imported gas
ми
because
готувалися до сценарію
before
Б.
signing
Ми
up to this
законтрактували
agreement,
гарантовані
we
обсяги
were been waiting for
постачання
a
через
plan B. We
Словаччину
have booked
від
the
декількох
guaranteed
великих європейських
supplies from
трейдерів, тому
Slovakia from a
що,
couple of
знову
big
ж таки, ми не
European
хотіли
traders
ризикувати,
because we
тому
didn't want
певний
to
імпорт
risk.
буде
So
відбуватися.
some of the import
Але
will take
так, ми
place.
очікуємо
But
дійсно,
yes,
що
we
як Україна, так і
expect that
європейський
both
ринок
the
наразі
Ukraine and
перенасичений
European
запасами
market is
газу,
currently
що ми
saturated with
сподіваємося, з
supplying
точки
with
зору
gas
соціальної
storage, and we hope
відповідальності,
that
не як
that the
видобувна
social
компанія, а як
responsibility
соціально
company,
відповідальна
as not
компанія,
like extraction
що це
company, but as a
спричинить певне
social
зниження цін
responsible
на нас найближчим
responsible
часом.
company, we do
Але
hope that it
ринок
will
річ
slightly
важка,
decrease the
тому,
prices.
як
But
кажуть, скоро
market
побачимо.
is a hard thing, so we will just see how it goes.
Еще один уточняющий вопрос.
Another
Насколько реально,
clarification
что
question,
Нафтогаз
whether it's
снизит
real that
гарантированную цену
Naftogaz
газа,
will
не знаю, с 1 января,
decrease the guaranteed
середине
price
января,
on
или она
gas
такой
and from
останется?
the very beginning of
Це
January
буде
or
залежати від
February.
ринку.
It will depend on
Це буде
markets.
залежати від
It
ринку.
will depend on
Ми
the
скоро
markets.
будемо знати відповідь
We
на це
will
питання.
soon learn the answer for this question. And by the way, next time we will continue our marathon 2020, and we will discuss those questions with different experts. But Andriy, two more questions. The payments for Gazprom, but the payment from Naftogaz to budget. You have paid in advance 8.5 billion hryvnias in dividends and 4 billion hryvnias and other taxation payments on the 26th of December. Does the company has the money for realizing the investment projects after
На
you have paid
найближчий
this
період
amount
часу
of
гроші
dividends?
є. Хотів би
For
уточнити,
the
що
really
сума
for
всіх
the-
авансових виплат
For the coming periods of
близька
time,
до
we have the
16
money, and I
мільярдів
would like
гривень.
to say that we have
Ми
paid
до
in
цього
advance for
платили.
around 16 billion
Тому
hryvnias.
на найближчий час,
So I do believe that in the
навіть без
recent
3
times,
мільярдів,
even
які ми
without
поки що
these
домовилися
3
відкласти в
billions
сторону
that we have
до
decided to
розмов
put
з
aside
акціонером,
before we
у
will
нас
have our
гроші є.
conversations with
Що
shareholders,
стосується
we have
майбутнього,
the money.
дуже багато
Speaking
знову
on
таки
the
буде
future,
залежати
It
від
will all
завершення реформи
depend
ринку газу.
whether whether the
Нам
reform of the
потрібно
gas market
врегулювати
will
старі
be
проблеми.
finalized. We have to
Нам потрібно
regulate the old
вирішити,
problems
що
that
робити з
we have to
тепловиками,
find
які
the
невчасно чи
understanding
не
of what
повністю
to do
розраховуються за
with
газ.
the heating pumps that
Нафтогаз
will
більше не
not
може бути
pay in
компанією,
time. Naftogaz
яка за
can no
рахунок
longer
транзиту
be the
буде
company who
використовувати
will use
перехресне
all of the
субсидіювання
transit
на
money and
вирішення
will
цих питань.
provide the
Далі просто такої можливості в нас
cross-subsidizing
немає.
to
І
settle
наша
both issues.
домовленість
We
з
do not
урядом
have this
полягає в тому,
opportunity
що в
furthermore.
цьому
And our
році ми
conversations
спробуємо
with the
всі
government
проблеми
are about that.
в
We are
турборежимі, як ми
trying
робили анбандлінг,
we're
в кінці
trying to
кінців
set
поставити
all of the
крапки над
problems,
і
to
врегулювати.
finalize all
І
of the
зараз
problems,
насправді
to
цього
put
є
all of
дуже
the dots
сприятливий
in
час.
the end. And
Ціна
currently
газу
is a very good
дозволяє
time for us. The
приймати
prices of
правильні,
gas can give us the
економічно
opportunity to
обґрунтовані та
have
ринкові рішення.
the right economically based decisions in place. The final question for our briefing, maybe you will hate me for that, but it's a personal question and a question about your money. Can you please tell us, clarify, or maybe you can clarify the information? There is foundations, Tabletочки, Come Home Alive, and the People's Front on rehabilitation of our veterans. Is it true that from the beginning of January of this year, 2019, throughout the year, you have given 100% of your award, which was around 11 million of hryvnias, from what I learned, to this funds, to these charitable funds?
Цифра
Is it
точна.
truth? Have you done
Я
it? Why
дійсно
did you do
пообіцяв на
that?
початку цього
Yes,
року,
that's the
що
right
всі
number.
мої
I
доходи від
promise that all
зарплати.
of my
I
promise that's all of
тому
my
до кінця
salaries.
року всі гроші я
But by
передавав
the end
на
of the year, till the
декілька
end of the
благодійних
year, I have
фондів.
provided all
Ви
of this
правильно
money to a couple of
порахували, і
charitable
сума склала
foundations.
трохи
You're right,
більше
you mentioned
11
them in the
мільйонів
right
гривень.
way. There was 11.7 million hryvnias. Thank you very much. Andrei Kobolev, the head of Naftogaz, has answered our main questions and the questions of the journalists. Our marathon, Transit 2020, continues. We continue. I would like to invite Alexander Kharchenko, the head of the Energy Resource Center, once again, and Svetlana Zalishuk coming back to us. Thank you very much, Andrei, for being with us. Thank you. Thank you.
Ну, да. Я бачу, що ти з сином сидиш, а я сина сюди приїхав, сина відправив глобус зі словами «Купи ще подарунків», і оце він там бродить.
Ну, можливо, все залежить. Тобто може бути до 9-ї там. Вчора у нас там, приміром, планувалося, ми мали би бути в ефірі 2 години, просто таке... Працювало.
Они в ефірі или ні, а? Так грустно сидять, що? Ми вже не повертаємо, все дуже добре. Нема.
Безпеки і європейських країн, Європейського Союзу безпосередньо. Яку загрозу несе в собі Північний потік-2?
Чудово. Гаразд.
Наскільки, якщо можете коментувати екологічне питання Північного потоку-2?
Яке питання?
Екологічне.
Чудово.
Так. Наскільки він може загрожувати екології безпосередньо Балтійського моря або тієї території, якою він полягає? Будемо ходити навколо цього.
Гаразд.
Можливо, ви ще хочете про щось сказати, щоб я вас наштовхнув на щось. Давайте зараз це обговоримо.
Складно сказати. Ми по ходу з вами зорієнтуємося.
ходу,
Я буду
добре.
порушувати якісь моменти, якщо я відчую, що ми чогось не
Про
торкаємося.
політику. На чому будемо зосереджуватися?
Це до вас питання.
Я можу глибоко копати, насправді.
Що саме?
Чи буде у вас можливість це коментувати, чи буде це в повноваженні? Який тиск команда прем'єра відчувала? І від кого?
Не можу цього коментувати.
Так.
Який, власне кажучи, і забирає 15. Це, в принципі, можна вважати такою більш-менш перемогою. Але ця перемога працює тільки в комбінації з американськими санкціями.
Ага. Тобто американці, вони ж там особливо не заморочувалися поясненням, чому вони вводять ці санкції. Там вже такого обґрунтування якогось адекватного немає. Да? Тобто,
Чому? Там
це
є,
санкції
здається, там є посилання як на агресивні дії
да.
Росії, так і на захист.
В загальних, да. Але вони на рік розраховані, як бюджет. Да? ці санкції?
Ні, чому? Вони розраховані на поки їх не знімуть. Вони впроваджені, і тепер їх може зняти Конгрес і Сенат, якщо
Тільки
вони так
якщо
побажають.
будуть-
Це безстрокова
Це
історія.
політично зняти їх уже буде складно, зважаючи, що
Це
там
треба
пов'язано
буде,
з
це треба
анексією
буде
Криму.
пояснювати. Це треба буде пояснювати. Я думаю, що нам дуже якраз пощастило, що зараз в пана Трампа така дуже непроста політична ситуація.
Да, йому буде важко просто
Йому
так з
політично
кондачка зняти
буде,
санкції.
його всі звинувачують, що він там проросійський агент, і тому вийти і сказати, я знімаю ці санкції, це буде таким дуже, я б цього не очікував найближчим часом, це точно.
Ну, там вже новий президент уже буде, теж треба розуміти.
Не факт, що буде новий, як кажуть соціологічні опитування.
Ну, там же в Америці завжди все дуже непередбачено.
Це, да, 8 swing states вирішують все.
Да. Що в цих угодах найкраще в контрактах для нас?
Для нас що найкраще? Отримання грошей 2,9 відразу. Це дуже позитивно. Дуже позитивно є те, що ми впроваджуємо європейські
Триває марафон.
So we continued our Transit 2020 marathon for the second day in a row, live here from our gas information center. We are keeping following the process of the transit of gas from the territory of Ukraine, from Russia to the territory of Ukraine to our European partners. Finally, the Russian side has signed the agreement, the final agreement, and I would like to say that I would like to discuss the results of signing of this agreement with my next guest. So please welcome Svetlana Zalishuk. She is the assistant and the advisor on the international issues of the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Alexei Honcharuk. So thank you very much for joining us here on the New Year's Eve. We're really sorry for disturbing you from chopping down the New Year's salads, but in the Ukrainian society it has happened that any kind of decision by Ukrainian government, any decisions for the top managers of the state-owned company is always doubted. And I would like to ask you a question. This agreement that we currently have, is it a treason or a victory for Ukraine? First of all, I would like to have this opportunity and to congratulate everyone with Christmas, New Year, and I'm really that would like to say that it's much pleasure that you have distracted me from my salads with an agreement that has been signed, but not the gas war that we had when Ukraine and Russia has claimed that Ukraine is responsible for this gas war, and still they were really sitting on the walls and they blackmailed Ukraine with our dependence on the Russian gas flows. Speaking on today's contract, we have to understand clearly what was the system of coordinates that made us sign this contract. We have to understand that globally, Ukraine and Russia are moving in basically opposite direction, geopolitical, and maybe mental, maybe mental even, yes. Well, yes, mental, cultural, civilizational, if you want to say that, yes. We clearly understand that Russia continues using energy and gas as one of the directions of aggression, the energy aggression. And under these conditions, under these circumstances, we had the negotiations with our strategical opponent, with an aggressor in our case. But our strategical task was here, first of all, to preserve our energy independence. Second thing was to apply and to build up European rules, to build up the European rules here in Ukraine, and to make Russia play under those rules, even at our territory, at Ukrainian territory. And I'm speaking about the using of our pipes. We have to give ourselves an understanding. We have to understand clearly that Russia is using the pipeline. Well, whenever you have the Russian pipeline, then this is the border of their expansion, and we understand it clearly. Even in Europe, that uses Russian gas for most of the 60% for their capacities. They're using 60% of the gas from Russia, which is basically the perimeter of the possible Russian aggression. But our main task was to make it that the European rules would be applied to those perimeters. So, okay, Svetlana, you're answering as a real politician. Nevertheless, is it a treason or a victory for Ukraine and Ukrainian economy and Ukrainian politics? I do not use this ambiguity between betrayal, the treason, and victory, because you cannot measure it under this black and white grade. I would like to tell you that there was no treason, that's for sure. And of course, we wanted to have more gas to be transferred through Ukraine. We really wanted Russia not to use the Nord Stream 2 other geopolitical projects to basically take our pipeline from the gain in order to supply the gas bypassing Ukraine and have this opportunity to blackmail Ukraine in energy sense and security senses. But we managed not to make that happen. And I believe that at this stage, this is a very good achievement for us, first of all, to protect Ukraine security-wise and to save Ukrainian gas capacities. Thank you. You've mentioned the question of the second Nord Stream, of the Nord Stream 2 already, and you've also mentioned that Russia is basically using gas as as a tool for blackmailing countries of the European Union and for the specific pressure on Ukraine. But when they started constructing Nord Stream 2, the European partners weren't they aware that Russia is basically a blackmailer? Didn't they know that? The problem is that some of our European partners and friends in parentheses, so some of them, they really benefit from this Nord Stream 2. But we have to say that once again, that maybe sometimes the European Union is also divided in understanding what is the main aim for the Nord Stream 2. For more than 20 countries from the very beginning, from 2015, using many different European mechanisms, have appealed to the legal basis of the work of the Nord Stream 2 of this Russian pipeline. And it's quite clear that it was the Baltic countries, our friends, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, Poland, the Eastern European countries. But at the same time, it is a very beneficial project for Germany. Germany are following their own economical interests. They want to create this German gas hub and to sell these hubs and to be the supplier for the other countries in the region. So that is why we've got to this very interesting moment, and we understand it that this is the project that really tries to disrupt all of the energy system in Europe and in Ukraine. We understand that it's a geopolitical project in order to bypass Ukraine and to supply the gas to Europe. We understand that this is the gas needle for some of the European partners that we have, and Europe basically is with this dilemma. Some of them will benefit of this, some will not. Like, I cannot understand that. You're making an equation between Europe and Germany. When you speak about Germany, when you speak about Europe, do I understand it clearly? No, quite the opposite. But basically it happened like that Germany was the main country who lobbied the Nord Stream 2 construction bypassing Ukraine. Now, I'm not equalizing that. I'm saying that Europe is divided with the way they treat Nord Stream 2, and we have to speak about a couple of our European friends, the Denmark, for example, who have really taken lots of time for them to approve the pipelines in their international waters, in the Danish waters, but they have still didn't resist. Yes, according to the international law, they didn't have the right to prohibit this construction, but they did everything in their efforts to try to delay it as much as possible. And we have to be grateful to our Danish colleagues, because their delays, their postponement from their side is giving us an additional opportunity to work on the international level. And it was a really big victory for us, with a big emphasized sign, for us to get closer to the American sanctions on Nord Stream 2. And now we can say that currently this construction has been stopped. We will discuss sanctions later on, but I would like to talk about the importance of the Ukrainian GTS. We have been talking about it for the second day in a row with our gas information center, but whether it is profitable, the route of Ukrainian GTS, whether it's profitable for our European partners, for the European customers and consumers. Ukraine is a cheaper way to transport gas, a simpler way, an easier way, and a more predictable way to transport gas. We have to say that it haven't been like that all the time. And 5 years ago, I do believe we will not be able to use these adjectives towards our GTS. We remember that gas has been the political needle that Ukraine also used, and it was the way to play on some political sides. It was the play for Russia to hold Ukraine back from our European desires and movements, from integration to European communities and Euro-Atlantic communities. We remember this stage of history quite well. But later on, after the Revolution of Dignity, Ukraine has made it say that we're moving towards European communities, and you cannot get there with your own rules, with your own energy rules. So we were very clear that we've signed up the third energy package. And in the framework of that, we have started the unbundling that has been completed, that you mentioned a lot today. We have built up all of the rules, we have built up and reshaped all of the rules that work in the energy system of Ukraine, and we become the predictable, transparent partner. And I believe this is the main achievement, and this is a very important aspect for us. Why? Because Russia has always had this reputation that they will use their pipeline, they will use their energy, they will use their gas. It will always be dictated by the political interest. Ukraine is the partner that says that we're not going to closing the valves and pushing some buttons will it be profitable for us. So Ukraine is a good partner, unlike Russia. But you have mentioned the third energy package, the Nord Stream 2, bypassing pipelines does not correspond, it's not compliance to third energy package. Euro Council knows that, Euro Parliament knows that. Yes, this is the part of the story. So Russia wants to be the monopoly player on the market in Europe, and they're basically their European partners, the other companies, the Netherlands company, Austrian company, who participated in constructing Nord Stream 2 in Europe, the European branch of it. Of course, they tried to make this business outside of European rules, but at some certain stage, with the help of the Ukrainian position, with the help of the position of our Eastern European partners, because of some of the position of the European commissioners, by some position of European deputies, because not all of them played according to the European rules, we managed to reach consensus. It happened just last year. We managed to reach a consensus on the European gas directives that now has to be implemented into the national legislation of each European country, and in Germany also. This means that now this European gas directive says that the suppliers and the transitors cannot be the very same company, the monopolist, Gazprom, which means that because of Ukrainian activity, we managed to make Gazprom also to go through the unbundling that would be also used for the Nord Stream 2 on the European territory. But this process haven't been completed. Yes, right you are. The process hasn't been completed. Currently, the countries are still implementing this legislation, implementing the gas directive to the legislation. Germany has done it quite recently, but Ukraine has a lot of doubts about it. And Ukrainian Prime Minister has said, and Naftogaz has said about it. We have some doubts that the independent regulator in Germany might use some of the amendments of the national legislation to take out the Northern Stream 2 out of the mandate of the European gas directive, so that they can avoid the gas directive in the framework of the new legislation in Europe. That will definitely be a treason, if we will use our terms of the media. Like, this would be like really clear treason. But as Ukraine, we believe that both the government and the parliament and the president and Naftogaz, they are working as the same team. They're working as the same team in the same field in order to make it not possible. And you have seen that, you have seen our joint work when Germany has given this legislation. We have fought against it. We had delegations, phone calls, just for us to be sure that there will be no treason on implementing this law. So our delegation on the United States of America, when we have fought against the sanctions on the Nord Stream 2. So all of the work has been allocated, first of all, and is now directed not to allow the Nord Stream to be outside of the European legislation. The final words, the European Commission plays a great role here. The European Commission that has to do everything in their efforts not to give the opportunities to have this kind of exemptions from the rules. Speaking on the rules, you have said that some of our European partners are not playing under the rules. So how does it happen like that? It depends on the force, on the power, unfortunately, and it always had been like that. And even despite that, we're speaking about the common values, especially in Ukraine, because we have proven that European values here in Ukraine, maybe Ukrainians have shown that there is more dignity, more readiness to fight for the European values were the price of our life and health, and we have been the witness in these processes, the war, annexation, the political prisoners that we have, the wounded, the disease that killed people. So we should not forget that we still have some of the European values. There is this joint mission that we have been mentioned, that every state have their own pragmatical, economical interests. And when we're talking about the European integration, we should also keep that in mind, that Ukraine will be successful if we will not let our enemies and adversaries or friends to use our vulnerabilities. So now, if you want me to say like this, building this European energy rules and fighting for this energy European rules is our main strategy on building those capacities and building those mutual rules that will not only be violated by Russia, but also won't be violated by Germany, Austria, Netherlands, and other countries. That would be really hard for us to do because we're not a member of European Union. But we still have signed the said energy package. And with these rules, we are already connected. Ukraine is already connected with the European Union. This first of all, and the second thing, we have the association agreement. Let us not forget that the association agreement that has been ratified in 2015 has also given us the clear understanding that Ukraine, together with the European Union, implements those rules together, in place under these rules together. We have spoken a lot about Nord Stream 2, and we are only speaking it with the negative connotations. Whether it really carries the threat, energy threat, for the energy threat of the European Union or energy threats for Ukraine. Are we only trying to be very negative about this? Let us talk about Ukraine. First of all, what is the danger for Ukraine? If we will not have the transit, throughout Ukraine, then first of all, there is the economical aspect. We will lose a couple of % of GDP. That's the very first moment from us for the Nord Stream 2 existence. Another moment that might be slightly under-evaluated by our international partners. The transit of Russian gas through Ukraine to Europe is the interest for Europeans to have peace here and to invest their own resources to preserve peace here. Why? Because the Europeans also need gas from Russia through the territory of Ukraine to Europe. If this gas will not be transferred throughout the territory of Ukraine, then maybe some of the two mines or some terrorists, God forbid, might happen, and we know that Russia might take whatever steps they consider possible to reach their goals. We have to consider those moments also. So we understand there might be some of the diversions, or some of the cutouts of the gas transportation. So we understand that keeping the transit is a very important safety and security factor. Yes, but now let us speak about the Nord Stream 2. So we're saying that if it's going to be the Nord Stream 2, and if it's going to be launched, then will it takes down our opportunities for Ukraine to have this energy shield, let us put it this way. We will not have this energy shield in place. Why we won't have it? Let us discuss it also. That's a very interesting thing to happen. One gas pipeline can carry that big of threat. You know, I've tried to show it to you right now in my previous comment, but let us imagine the situation that Russia will completes the building of the Nord Stream 2, even if it works with the European rules, even corresponds and compliant to the said energy package. But Russia does everything so that Ukraine is taking out of this energy cycle of transmitting gas to Europe. Tomorrow, the gas will be transmitted from the Turkish Stream, from the Baltic Sea. When Russia will grow the capacities and infrastructure when Ukraine will not be needed at all. And then everything that is going to be happening here under the Europeans' nose on the territory of Ukraine will not be really interesting for the Europeans. And that is also the Russians' calculations and Russian strategy. I would like to remind you that Nord Stream 2 has no additional economical ideas. From the very beginning, Ukrainian pipeline has more capacities, has more volumes to be covered. And even there's opportunity to increase those volumes of gas to Europe. So just speaking on the economical part of it, so yeah, we said there's no economical profits, that Nord Stream 2 has only the political impact. Yes, but then answering your question, why should they invest billions of dollars? Why should they bury it in one next pipe if there's no economical reasoning behind that? Yes, Svetlana, this is the question that we should ask the Russian taxpayers. Why they're not asking this question for their government, for their managers. But I would like to ask you another thing. Hypothetically for us to consider that the Turk Stream will be completed, Nord Stream 2 will be completed, then we will have basically the monopolization of gas market by Gazprom, by Russia. And European partners, they do not see that. Or why? I believe that European partners, some of the European partners, they see and they protest against it, like Poland or other countries who are trying to invest into diversification of their gas streams. Even more, Poland has announced that because of their active diversification of energy resources, they've said that they will not need Russian gas furthermore in a couple of years. They're ready to pay more, they're ready to pay higher price, but they understand that Russia will not have any leverages to influence Polish energy system. But the different situation is in Germany that uses the Russian partnership, and I'm quite sure that they're using it through the serious gas lobby inside of Europe, inside of Germany. I don't think it's a gas lobby, this is the political lobby, and there's the thing I wanted to ask you further on. Do you believe that this is a coincidence that the different companies that were engaged in constructing Nord Stream 2, we have people who are the alumni of the German intelligence service through the Russian times? Is it a coincidence? I don't want to be very naive, and I would like to remind us that geopolitics is all about money, about billions. And we also have to recall that Mr. Schroeder, the former chancellor, he feels himself very good in Russia. He has been the head of the Rosneft corporation, so he feels quite good about himself. And basically, he is helping Russia to receive this monopoly in Germany also. You have just said it, that basically from the Germany side, the partner for constructing the Nord Stream 2, this is the person who has been working in Stasi. In Eastern Germany, this is the person who has really tight connections with Putin himself. So you quite right you are. So it's not a coincidence. That has been a planned policy of Russia. This is money. It's about money. It's about money that corrupt. It's about the money, gas money that corrupt even more. And there are some specific people who earn for that, with that, and who make money with that. So I will just get a couple steps back, and I would like to say that everyone has their pragmatical interest. And Germany is following their economical interests by being a partner in Nord Stream 2, by violating the interest of other countries. Yes, of course. But we should also have our positions reflected. So we also, throughout building European rules, we should follow our own pragmatic interests. So, okay, we have the new contract for transit. We know what Russia is. Whether Russia will not violate those agreements, will not violate those contracts. Can we be sure that we will not have any unclear situation happening, and Russia will say, like, okay, dear friends, but we're stopping the transit of gas, and Ukraine is to blame, as it usually happened? I do believe that this question should be answered with understanding the historical context. Let us recall the Budapest Memorandum, when Russia is one of the sides of the Budapest Memorandum. Not just the side, but the side that is the guarantee of the security and safety of Ukraine. So we were really conscious about letting go the nuclear weapons, and we have received the attack from Russian side in 2014, an annexation of the territory. The military attack, annexation of our territories, Crimea and Donbass, and there are still the active military actions are being taken and being processed in our territory. We can also mention the signing, the territorial integrity, the UN, where Russia is not only the member of the UN, but Russia is the member of the Security Council of the UN. which is basically the guarantee for the peace of the world. But they are, as one of the main terrorists, as the US have now said, the US has now said that Russia is financing terrorism all over the world. Yes, but we have to understand that Ukraine has appealed to the International Court of UN that Russia has violated one of the conventions by the UN on supporting terrorism. That was a precedent for Ukraine that we have appealed to the courts, and there are really big chances that Ukraine will win in this case also. This is a long-term activity, this is the long-term game, this is about our pragmatic interest that we're building on, and we cannot have these parallel settlements that we have signed in with the contract. We should stop our fight at ever different flanks. No, it's really important to explain and to say that we're not going to do that. This is not dependable processes. But okay, do we have these stops? Do we have this? Do we have the warranties that Russia will not violate the contract? It's a complicated issue, but by using those historical examples, I wanted to say that we have no warranties, no guarantees at all, because Russia currently is totally unpredictable player, one of the most aggressive political players. We're speaking about both the Middle East, Syria, Turkey, Georgia, Ukraine, Transnistria, mitigating the meddling with elections and for how their submarines are entering different international waters. We understand that currently this is the investor of the danger in the world, so we cannot speak of any kind of thresholds or mitigators to discuss it. But what we can do, we can become stronger economically. We should become stronger economically. This should be one of the main strategies for Ukraine, to do something that maybe it sounds like not connected or whatever, but from many different spheres. But corruption and energy, when we're fighting the corruption, building institutions, transforming the courts, transforming the General Prosecutor's Office, transforming our taxations and fiscal services. No, it's a very important moment. It's that I believe that there's creating the attractive environment for our investors. And then later on, when tomorrow we will have the German companies that will be here in Ukraine and they will be investing their millions and billions here, they will be competitive to those German investors that are sitting in Russia. And tomorrow, when the next chancellor will come up to the decision who he or she wants to deal with, then the German lobby will be working in Ukraine and they will not leave the chancellor to leave the country in the sphere of interest of Russia because it will be not profitable for them. Okay, but getting back to the question of any leverages, just want to calm down all of our audiences. For the sake of the Plan B, Europe and Ukraine has been prepared by storing the record amount and record volume of money, record volume of gas. So let us hope that Russia will keep up to the agreement and everything will be okay. Thank you very much. Our guest was Svetlana Zalishuk, the guest of this place. We are continuing the Transit 2020 Marathon. Please stay with us.
Вітаємо всіх наших глядачів.
So we're
З
pleased to
вами
welcome our
Тетяна
audience
Гончарова.
back
Триває
again. My name is
марафон
Tatiana
«Транзит
Goncharova. We
2020».
continue our
І
Transit
зараз в нашому
2020 marathon, and we're
інформаційному
back to
центрі
our
ще кілька
informational
годин
center.
поспіль ми
For a
будемо
couple
обговорювати
hours
деталі
more, we will be
угоди
discussing
транзитної
the
між Україною та
details
Росією.
of our
І зараз
transit
в нашому
agreement between
інформаційному
Russia and
центрі
Ukraine. And
як
currently in
заступник
our
міністра
informational
закордонних
center,
справ
we have
України
the
з питань
former Deputy
євроінтеграції
Minister
Лана
on
Зеркаль. Лана, я вас
European
вітаю.
Integration Ministry, Lana Zerkal, we're pleased to
Хотіла
welcome you
адресувати
here.
вам ці
Good evening.
питання,
Good evening. I
на
wanted to
які,
address you
я
those
розумію, з
questions,
яких
and I
причин
do
не зміг
understand there
відповісти
are
на брифінгу
many different
годину
questions that
тому
hour
очільник
ago,
Нафтогазу Андрій
Andriy
Коболєв,
Kobolev, the head of
він не
Naftogaz,
може
could not
говорити про
cover, could not
політичну
answer because he
складову.
cannot speak
Він
about the
може
political
обговорювати виключно
component of this
газові
agreement. He can
питання,
only
газові
consider
деталі
the
цієї
gas
угоди.
details
Між
of
тим
this
вам
agreement.
якраз
But for
може
you, I
поставити
believe I can
питання
give all of those
політичне.
questions, the political
Дивіться, хочу
questions I want
процитувати
you to
Михайла
cover.
Крутіхіна.
So I want to
Він є
quote Mikhailo
партнером
Krutikhin,
Росенерджі,
who
він
is the
коментує
partner of
багато
Rosenergy, and he
енергетичних питань
comments
Росії,
upon many
зокрема
different
питання
issues on
бізнесу.
gas with Russia
І
to
от
the
він
business
сказав,
issues and
згадуючи
publications, and he said,
2006,
recalling
2009,
2006,
2015
recalling
роки,
2009,
коли були газові війни,
2015,
що
when we had the
ніхто
gas
не
wars,
може
and he said that
гарантувати,
no one can
що
guarantee
каприз,
that
дослівно я цитую,
the
кремля не
caprice
призведе до збоїв в
the decrees of
постачанні
Kremlin will not
газу, транзиті
cause
газу через
will
Україну.
not cause
Є
the
договір,
violations of
але
the
є
agreements
каприз
of the Kremlin, of
Чи
the
дійсно ніхто не
violate
може
the
гарантувати?
agreement that has been said.
Зараз
Can no one guarantee? Or the times
змінився.
has changed. I believe that the times have changed, and I do believe that Russians have to understand it also. I do believe that's the one that understanding that we have had the contract in place, that they understand that the time has changed. They have decided to use the European rules in the contract. There is also the understanding that the times have changed, and we have been much better prepared for the possible crisis, which is also well good for us. You've said that we were well prepared. This is another question I want to address you once again. Andriy Kobolev has said he will not comment upon that, but Naftogaz has won the Stockholm arbitrage, and while that you were working in the Ministry of External Affairs, and we have also spoken about the some of the victories in the foreign directions. Why we've managed to win in those two directions, but there are a lot of spheres, well, we haven't won. Andriy Kobolev has said that the teamwork is on the high level, and that is why we have able to win. Why we do not win in other things? We do not have the understanding of the common goal. Why we don't have any victories in place? Even though I don't really like to divide it for the treasons and victories, but why we don't have the victories here? The victories happen when the teams are working for that, when we have a close understanding that the victory is not possible throughout the very fast point of time. When we have a clear understanding that in order to reach results, we need to cover a specific path, and this path might take a couple of years and even longer. So, and that is why we need the people working on them places. We have a lot of people who have high mobility of staff. We people that do not stick to us, then we don't have the conditions in place for the people to be working throughout the years and to leave good results. But what are the conditions to that? The common objectives, or what kind of conditions should it be? The pragmatical point of it, the salaries, the prime incentives, what it is. Many different components. But if you only take a look at how we have had the contracts set before, and how the contracts have been set in 2009, right now we had all of the legal officers who have been doing all of these processes throughout the recent years to make those contracts, who know all the best legislations connected to that, who all know all of the details, what can be included into contracts, what cannot. And 2009, how many lawyers did we have at that point of time? What was the pressure for the people who have conducted those contracts in 2009? What was the psychological pressure for them at that point of time? So I believe that there's many factors that we should consider, that we should talk about, the ones that we have changed, what has changed in our country from the recent years. Maybe I should have started with a simpler question of how do you evaluate this transit agreement overall? Well, it's hard for me to say. I haven't seen yet what it is about, but basically the sense of it, whether it's positive or negative for geopolitical point of Ukraine, I believe that still it's a very good result. It's a very good result that we managed to reach with all of our joint efforts, and I believe that this will have the long-term influence, the long-term influence for the development of Ukraine as a transit state. I want to quote the president of Russian Federation. He said, "We have noticed out that the rhetoric of Russia has changed towards Ukraine." You wanted to speak about Mr. Pototsky? No, I want to speak about Mr. Putin. Mr. Putin has said in Berlin, for example, and I was really surprised by that, but they said that we will try to make Ukraine satisfied with those agreements. Why would the president of Russian Federation say that? You know, to be quite emotional about the satisfaction of Ukrainian side. Why would he do that? Why would he need that? There's different ways of the different kinds of satisfaction, let us be honest. And I believe that he needs that in order to create some kind of specific image, for not to be talked that has a negative connotations towards Ukraine overall. But on one hand, he's been saying about satisfying Ukrainians over this agreement, but then he says that Ukrainians do not exist as Ukrainians overall. So basically, he has some problems with his personality, or at least he's creating this kind of opinions in order to take down the sanctions, for example, or for the sanctions to be mitigated, or something else. So there is his definite interest in that. Another question I wanted to ask you, maybe you haven't seen yet the agreement, but the new agreement presupposes the international arbitrage for that. And some of the experts, maybe they understand what they're saying, maybe they're just joking, because not all of the experts understand what they're talking about. They said at least not Stockholm arbitral tribunal. So what other can be existing there? Like, I don't know why no one likes the Stockholm tribunal, because I know that we had the tryouts to write out the British law to that moment. And what is the difference for them? Well, the difference are many different approaches towards that. And usually, according to the British legislation, the financial contracts are being dealt with. And they're mostly dealing with the financial contracts, but the Stockholm jurisdiction are being used in different commercial agreements. And sometimes they're even using the Singapore jurisdiction. As far as I remember, for the final oil agreement is about the Singapore mandate. So if we have any doubts with that, or that, okay, so if you understand it clearly or no, if Russia will violate the agreement, so whether we can, let us say, take a couple of steps back with these negotiations and to replay those things. How do you mitigate those things? Now, you can't take a couple of steps back. So we have, if there are some violations, then we're just settling the new claims, and the new claims are given to the other side. Then the arbitrary court is created, and we're starting everything from you. When we are coming to the New Year's Eve, and we're discussing this gas relationship, and we have spoken that we're taking down the mutual claims from Gazprom and Naftogaz, but the experts, they say that it's okay because it's not clear whether we would win in those tribunals, but the average people who are very emotional about the relationships between Russia and Ukraine, they say, "Oh my God, how could we do that? How could we forgive this amount of money?" Can you please tell us whether it was really hard, whether like the winning of those almost 3 billions was really hard, and whether could we hope for additional money and additional decisions to be made? Because Andrei Kovalyov has said it would be completely different courts, completely different arbitrage, so maybe we would not even receive those money. So it was logical for us to take down the claim. Let us take a look at that. In 2015, even in 2014, we've started the process with the claims that we've had. After the claims have been set out, we have almost half a year so that the other side, the claimant, would appeal, would respond to that. Then we have the arbitrage in place. So it might take the arbitration in work. Then it might take for about 5 years to do that. So we need the time to arrest the equities, arrest the assets, then the courts on these assets, the courts on equities, then the courts on the opportunities to use these properties or assets as the compensation according to the court's ruling. So it might have taken many years. So basically those agreements that have been signed, so on one hand they basically get into the zero all of the other processes, but on the other hand they create the new legislation field to work on with. And in this legislation field, Ukraine already has the rights. Ukraine has the opportunities there. We understand how to protect those opportunities. They're very transparent. They're being regulated by the European rules, and they're quite clear and understandable by our partners. Okay, another question, but in different interpretation. Should we expect any surprises from Russia or no? We should always expect surprises from Russia, but they're always unpleasant surprises. The international law, and we do not say like what arbitrage have been written in the agreement, but if there's going to be something violated, that will take time, a lot of time. Another moment, when speaking about the gas agreement, we should take a look about the international media. Maybe I will quote a couple of those. But some of the journalists and some of the media, they report that they're speaking about the package agreement that we're not aware of. And these topics, the gas agreement, have been connected to the exchange of the prisoners with Donbass. But the gas experts say we can only discuss the gas part of it. President only writing about gas. And what is about those desires in real life? You know, the most important, I wouldn't like to see in this political component to see the decision on this 3 billion by Mr. Yanukovych, because the processes on this court have still continued, they're still active, and we should see the final solution on the cassation in this quick court on this case, and after that we will have the final decision of how this court will go on. We had the Court of Appeal. They supported us from the 3 lords, and they have said that Ukraine has no other ways of actually treating the aggression and the overall consequences of aggression of Russia against Ukraine, but to have this arbitrage in the London High Supreme Court. So this condition that the Ukraine has not provided these 3 billion to Russia, then will be treated by the London Supreme Court. And we have the opportunity to receive the satisfaction for the aggression of Russian Federation and all of the losses they cause to Ukrainian economy and Ukrainian integrity. I wanted to quote a couple of other Russian publications because we made an overview of that. And for example, the RBK Russia, they quote the Minister of Energy, Russian Federation, they say that the price for gas will be market price today for Ukraine, and they presuppose that it might sell it not only to Naftogaz, but to many other companies in Ukraine. But today, Andriy Kobolev has said that it's not clear what companies were meant under that. And it also said, the Russian media also said, and I have just forgot about it, I'm thinking about how should I formulate this question in the right way. So it also might be this kind of hint to Zelensky to give him the opportunity to decrease the price on gas. So it's a kind of political component to that. Do you believe that? Now, that might be not only the move to Mr. Zelensky, but also the move towards Mr. Medvedchuk for like giving the opportunity to other companies to have the license to export gas. Well, that's okay. No one has mentioned that before. That's a very interesting point of view. Well, yes, that's possible. But many surprises can be hidden in that way. This is a big challenge. It's a big challenge that gives a lot of opportunities, and any kind of company, as Andrew has pointed out, can get into the market and can supply gas to Ukraine. The only thing they have to do, they will have to be working based on the agreement that has been approved by the national regulator and to book the capacities. That's it. Novaya Gazeta has written that the settlements agreement demonstrates that to the Russian partners that Russia can be a good negotiator, and the Russian side can be the good in negotiating for new contract. This is the point of view not only from the Novaya Gazeta, that with this agreement Russia has mitigated the political part of it, and they have supported the idea that they are an equal player. You know, I believe that there have to be some of the events taking place, or some time has to pass, so that we would understand that Russia is not using gas as weapon against Ukraine. And but because, you know, just to trust the word of Russian Federation is really hard. We should actually see that in practice. Yesterday, we have announced the press conference by the Prime Minister of Ukraine, so we waited that we will be signed yesterday's evening, and the press conference was delayed, and then we had the message on President's page, and the Russian media has started that the agreement has been signed. Do you believe that there was some problems with signing up the agreement because they were expected something to happen earlier than it had happened? Do you believe there may be some risks that this agreement would have been delayed or this agreement wouldn't have been signed at all? Well, I believe that the Russian president has also been reported of what is going to be signed or whatever. I don't believe that Mr. Miller would have signed this agreement without additional consultation with the president of the Russian Federation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lana. Thank you for being in our informational center today. So I would like to remind all of our audience that we have talked to the former deputy of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lana Zerkal, and we are now continuing on our Transit 2020 marathon. Thank you everyone who's watching us. We are going live. We continue on our work, continue on our informational work, and please do not search for the simple answers of the complex questions, but stay with us.
Олена Осмоловська, голова прес-служби «Нафтогаз Україна» у нас в студії. Олена, питання найперше, яке турбує мене особисто.
Olena Osmolovska, the head of the press service of the Naftogaz, and the question was, first of all, why have you decided your page, in the Naftogaz page, to do that a communication instrument and to inform, first of all, what is happening there at the Facebook page, and later on then, and by the way, to be very ironic in the messages, to be very relaxed messages than you do in that unofficial way. So why have you decided to do that? Not all of the structures in Facebook, they communicate then that operate way. It was important for us to gain trust. This page has been created in 2015 when we understood that we have really significant players playing against us. Those were the Russian media, the Russian experts, and the people who support their agenda here in Ukraine. Thus, we needed to find some kind of a tool that will give us the opportunity to reach our audience and give us the opportunity for not to get trapped when we should continue taking down some information later on and someone takes down us. So the Facebook page is a direct connection with our audience, with the people who... Yes, by the way, I wanted you to describe this audience, whether they have a critical thinking or no. Maybe you don't like when there are some banal, simple questions. We've been working with it from 2015, and now this page is needed for us to communicate with the people, and we have understood quite clearly that this audience is quite clear. Those are the people who are taking care with the gas questions and the people who are caring about the wars between Russia and Ukraine, and the gas war, the gas front is an important front here, so our audience is very patriotic, we're people with active positions, and very frequently they have helped us to provide a very important information for us. And those people, they have been read by many people who are making the main decisions in the country. And this audience is very important for us still to support some of the decisions in place by the Ukrainian authorities. Maybe you would like to tell us then that your page is faster in informing the people, and you do not need an additional Ukrainian media to inform the people about the results. That the Russian media, they've been faster in delivering the information. Maybe you'll explain us why. So we have to disseminate these two different questions. How do we communicate with with people on other questions and why the Russian media receive the information faster than we do. Our page on Facebook is a different instrument for that audience that is very important for us, because those people who are writing in Facebook, then everything they write, then it's been seen by the people who might make decisions in Ukraine. That used to happen all around Ukraine, because those are the people with the active civil position. They are interested in this counteraction with Ukraine and Russia, and the gas topic is a part of this counteraction that we have. They're really supporting Ukraine. They're supporting Naftogaz right now, and basically, I am reporting to them with those postings. So every post is my report to the people who would like to be aware of the story. Unlike the media, the professional media, those people might not know all of this difficult backgrounds. They might not know how it has happened. Through the professional journalists, we also have the fast communication in place. We're always trying to contact them as fast as possible, officially and unofficially. I'm always providing the information to them. But the question is, and the problem is, whether a lot of those people, they're actually working in the fastest pace as I do. They should not be explained with a lot of things. They already have a lot of baggage of the knowledge. The people who read my page or the page of Naftogaz and Facebook, they live with my life. They have different things to take care of. They don't have their own businesses to take care of. So basically, at this page, I am delivering in a simple language of everything what is going on now. In order for it not to be boring, and for it not to be boring for the people, we're trying to do that. We have started to speak in an ironic way. We're trying to be very ironic. We're trying to be very good in communicating compared to the way we're talking with the state-owned companies or commercial companies, and it works. But you have seen that it works, but you have seen that this kind of sentiment, a better sentiment, a funnier sentiment, it has to be in time where you have started from the very beginning that, yes, of course, we will be very responsible, it will be very serious page, or there should be just the consumers of this information has brought you that the Kobylev should be official, but the page might be slightly freer in what they express the points of view. This is how it's called, the personality of the brand. So we have been building the personality of our brand from 2015. And when I have understood that the personality is a bit of a different one, and the audience is a bit of a separated, the audience that reads the overall releases is separated, this is the moment when we try to congratulate the journalists with the Day of Journalists. We understood that this page is not for them, because it wasn't really nice to say, dear journalists, we greet you with that. So I've started to write that, and I've understood that no, that they're reading different sources, and there's a different audience that reads me here, and they're not professional media workers. They're just taking care about what's going on in the country. So that is why we tried to make a different shift to that. So the audience has changed. Yes, the audience has shaped us. As far as we're speaking about Mr. Kobylev already, why in the recent months, when the negotiations with Russians and Europeans, he's not participating in negotiations, but Yuri Vitrenko is participating, like he's already been called the gas general by Ukrainian media. By the way, your comment upon that, whether you like it when you're using this metaphorical labels, they're not only using the official position, but have this metaphorical labels towards our people. So why is he participating in negotiations on the side of Naftogaz, and that's it? Transit 2020 marathon continues, and from our Gas Information Center, our dear friends will continue in following the situation around the negotiation, around the agreement with Ukraine and Russia. And I have Vitaly Litvin here, and I would like to present you with our next guest, Andriy Favorov, the head of the Integrated Gas Division of Naftogaz Ukraina. Andriy, good day. So the very first question for you, how can you comment the results of the signing of the agreement for the transit of gas through the territory of Ukraine? If you help me, I will start with a completely different topic. First of all, I would like to congratulate all of our audience, all of our people all of our viewers with the New Year's Eve. I would like to wish them to have the warm home, and I would like for them to wish all the best and all the joy in 2020. because we are entering this year understanding our independence, energy independence, and understanding our achievement, because there has a lot of work that has been done. With the help of this transit agreement, we will have the warmth and heat not only in the houses of Ukrainian but our European partners also. Yes, I believe that the work that has been done throughout 2019 in order for us to reach this moment was really big, was really dramatic work. The sanctions of the United States of America that have been induced, and the storage of gas that has been created to support the Plan B for this situation, and the unbundling of our company has also helped it. It helped us to do what? To create transparent, clear, understandable rules for the gas market work. Currently, gas has been divided. The questions of gas has been divided from the political questions, and I believe they have turned to the function of commercial questions. No one is discussing, no one is creating big disputes or big political conferences on about supplying potatoes to Ukraine. The very same thing about the supplies of gas. Do not give the ideas to the presidents of some of the countries to provide this kind of conferences on this potato supply. But still, nevertheless, you've said that there has been a dramatic preparations that have been conducted before that. For me and all of the viewers, all of the audience who's watching our marathon online, it's quite hard to understand what kind of work have you done. You know, you've signed the agreement, that's it, nothing more. You know, if you want peace, you have to get prepared for war. You know, there's an old saying that is right in a way. If we're speaking about Mr. Kobolev with Naftogaz and all of his team, I believe that he did a really great, tremendous work, and I will just show you what I mean by that. First of all, we have understood that in 2020 we might not have transit in place. If we will not have the transit, then the volume of the transit to gas supply to Europe will decrease. We already have the agreement, yes, but in April, May, June, we were not aware whether we'll have the agreement or no. And moreover, till the moment that our colleagues from the US on the level of Congress and Senate, they have not imposed the sanctions, that was still a big question whether we will have the opportunity to get to this agreement. So we're really grateful for all of the support that has been granted to Ukraine. We'll get later to this question of sanctions, but about the work and the agreement. In order to get prepared to this negotiation position, we have stored around 4 billion of additional volumes of gas. So whatever they like, however the Russian Federation like, they didn't have the opportunity to blackmail Ukraine in this negotiations. To sign up, yes, that's good. No, they haven't signed up, okay, we can live on our own. And that was this guarantee of freedom. This was the guarantee of the negotiation power, and the guarantee that we have the leverage to feel ourselves equal at whatever complicated or simple negotiations would be. And I believe that this is a very good, big contribution and achievements to get prepared to these negotiations. And I'm really sure that we have a lot of things to be proud of, because we have passed this test in the best way. Okay, I understand your position, but we have the position of the European media. Let us discuss of what the European media are writing from the European and the world countries. The European media, they are very optimistic, just as well as you are, about the signing of this agreement between Russia and Ukraine. They're very optimistic. Russia supplies around 40% of all of the gas to the European market through Ukraine, and on the 31st of December, that would have been the last day that the previous contract would have been acted. And Deutsche Welle journalists have said that this agreement is a triumph of democracy of both countries. Moreover, the agreement itself is a positive signal for Ukraine, from Ukraine, because Kiev has shown its loyalty as a good transmitter of the Russian gas. What happened? What was before? Ukraine was not treated as a good partner in this transit, or what? I will answer in this way. Before that, there was a lot of different political and PR speculations. There were many different tryouts of the media and the propaganda tools of the media to show black as white and white as black. What has changed in 2019? We have been prepared for any kind of the development of situation. So we have the opportunity to get our story in the full capacities, as open, as right as all of our opponents were. And yes, really, the Ukrainian gas and gas transmission system has the biggest flexibility and has the biggest capacity to provide whatever volume of transit that is needed for the different stakeholders, and any other bypassing pipelines, which I do believe are the political projects. Any kind of bypassing pipelines cannot provide this flexibility that are needed by the European consumers now. Actually, there's a lot of comments that you have. The quote that was really good moments. I do believe that currently what we are seeing is a global trend. The global trend can be comparable to the 60s, when the market of oil has become the world market but not regional market. What has happened? The consumers and the producers of oil, they have started not to deal with the geographical connection. They saw that we will deliver the oil for the biggest price. As a buyer, as a producer, the Saudi Arabia has gone to China, to US, to Europe, and they have got the world market. The very same trend, the very same tendency, the very same irreversible processes are currently happening in the international gas markets. It's not about pipeline from point A to point B, but basically a good, a commodity which you can deliver by a pipeline or you can get it by the LNG terminals. And that is quite clear. And that is the world, the gas world is constantly dramatically changing. And I'm really happy that Ukrainian role in this international tendencies and trends is positive, constructive, and it gives the opportunity for both the consumers and the users of the services of the transportation of gas, giving them the opportunity not only to have the protected delivery, but also to have it in the most economical reasons way. American New York Times claims that this agreement that has been signed yesterday actually saves Russian next reputation hits as a very good long-term loyal partner that delivers the resources to Europe. New York Times believes that the gas negotiations should be considered in a broader political context of relaunching the relationship of Russia and Ukraine. The gas issue, according to their opinions, the journalist's opinion, was considered together with the prisoners' exchange. I'm not in a position that I can comment political decisions and political assumptions, but how do you believe the connection works or no? I cannot comment upon that. I cannot comment upon that because this is a political process. I do not know that. I can only comment the commercial negotiations that we had. The commercial negotiations that are interconnected and they are following the main aim of the transit negotiations. What can we say here for sure? For sure, we can say that the signing of these contracts proves the role of Ukraine as the good, loyal, dedicated transmitter, transitor of gas from the producer to the supplier. What will change in these 3-5 years? What? Ukraine will have the opportunity to be competitive with the gas production of Russian Federation as a gas producer in the European market. That's what I believe is our next strategical task, and we will concentrate all of our efforts on that for the following 3 to 5 years. And I do believe that all of those specialists, with all of the staff support, with the support of the government and president, and I believe that we can do that. Yes, we will need some time. Yes, we will need some investment, but I am really sure that our experts and professionals in Shabalinka, in Lviv, in Ivano-Frankivsk, in Poltava, I'm really sure that they are now working. They're drilling new sources. They're looking for the new resources in order for us to reach this goal, to become the competitive producer. Because our GTS should be loaded with our gas that we will export to the European countries. And do you believe that this agreement might influence that? We should not start thinking about the energy efficiency. We should not think about the energy safety. We can extract less gas basically after this agreement in place. I do not believe that this agreement will influence these cases. I believe that we have to separate different things. First of all, we have to separate transit from extraction. We have to say that we have the system that is capable of transmitting 200, 300 billion cubic meters of gas a year. This volume can be transferred and transmitted from Siberia or from Kharkiv region, Ivano-Frankivsk region, Lviv region, Poltava region. I see no reasons why we cannot do that. Yes, that will be hard. Yes, we're lagging behind for 20 years, speaking on technology and investment. Why? Because we had the populistic decisions in 90s when the extraction has been provided for free, when we didn't have enough profits and enough cash money for us to invest additional drilling and additional resources. Because we have to, first of all, research for the resources. We will have to find the capacities of gas. We will have to reach those capacities by the effective technologies. Like, I'm sorry, but the best equipment that we had was the equipment from the 60s. When our drilling stations were made in 60s, we could not even hope that we will get to the better level and to better technological resources of gas. We had the gas on 4 kilometers deep. Yes, we've got very effective technologies to extract it, but the technologies for 4 kilometers that do not give us an opportunity to work at 6 kilometers or 7 kilometers. And we're already in this breakthrough. And I'm really believe that the future of Ukrainian extraction capacities is very good and very, very bright. And we can do everything for us to support the European market with Ukrainian supply. American Stratford Agency say that despite the new agreement on gas, Moscow and Kiev are still going to go in separate ways in energy. The agreement that has been signed yesterday is the best situation and decision, ad hoc decision at this moment, because this agreement gives the opportunity for Russia to continue with their supplying gas with the cheapest routes, while the alternative routes, the Nord Stream 2 and the Turk Stream, are not ready to be exploited in full capacities. When those streams bypassing Ukraine will work, then the Ukrainian needs will be shattered for both Ukraine and European Union countries. But in the future, Kremlin cannot use gas as blackmail during the negotiations with Ukraine, which will help to take down the tensions between two countries. Do you agree with that? Overall, I guess yes, but I think that I would try to dig deeper. That's not a big secret. It's quite a known situation that by the end of 19th and beginning of the 2000s, Mr. Putin has published his candidate thesis. The topic of his thesis was the export of the Russian energy carriers as the instrument to reach the geopolitical goals of the Russian Federation. It was not covered. It was not a secret. It was the strategy of Kremlin that has been voiced out and that has been used for the recent 20 years. So basically, including the supplies of energy carriers with the political goals of one state in Europe with another, that's something that started to die off. This is the strategy to mix up political goals with gas and oils for the good people I give the discounts. This is something that the Russian Federation has used. With this contract, this strategy has passed to an end. Andrei, you say that we're living currently in this reality where gas is a commodity, a good already, that can be transported all over the world, not on the pipelines, but also at the LNG ships. But then there is the question whether we will have the politics here as the main factor. No, the factor of politics here has become less and less and less with every year. But for 4 years we have been driven without the supply of gas from Russian Federation. You cannot further on keep on giving us the conditions with just having this one strong point, like you don't like it, we will just cut out the heat, we will cut out the gas. No, the king of the pipelines has deceased. Market and market relationship, that is something that is now appearing. The demand and supply with no political background to that, with no political conditions to that. This is the period we're living currently in. And I believe that this is the main achievement of that. Because gas is now a good as well as potato is. And I do hope that for the first time around for this 20 years, we will discuss gas as frequently in the press and the media as we discuss potato, because this has to be as well indifferent point for the political issues as potato is. Yes, it will require some time. And yes, it will mean that connecting the gas to the political moment will continue doing that. But I believe we're finalizing it. Yes, the question of the price for gas and for oil is always sensitive. We will continue to discuss it. But yes, let us not forget that as Ukraine, we are winning when we have the clear commercial conditions, not only as the consumer of gas, but also as the supplier who has to further on increase the supply and extraction volumes. And I believe we have a lot of good, strong points to reach this goal. So we have the potential in place. Yes, okay, good. But then the question, can we speak about the strategy for 5 or 10 years on strategy? No, it's not just that we can't talk about it, we're talking about it. Not about the potential, but a real strategy. Yes, a real strategy. We had this opportunity to present it and to discuss it, and I do believe that in 2020 we will have the big public discussion on the strategy of the extraction of gas and oil in Ukraine. And we have to be very clear about that and open about that. For what we have done, the extraction of gas in Ukraine has started in 50s, 60s. For some time, for about 10 years, Ukraine has been #1 in gas extraction in Europe and exported gas to Russia, by the way. The first pipelines were from Shabelinka, from Kharkiv region to Moscow and to Minsk. They have supplied gas there in the 60s, but let us be really also open with that. In order for us to resolve the problem, we have to first of all acknowledge the problem. What is the problem? That the simple gas that can be extracted from the 4-kilometer deep drills, we already had extracted it. We have no more this gas in those amounts that we had. You're talking about I'm speaking about the non-conventional gas. I'm speaking about the offshore gas. I'm thinking about the deeper drilling gas, and this is the potential that we also have to consider. That we have to learn how to use effectively, how to extract effectively and sell effectively. In order to do that, we need to have the additional equipment, and we have it. We have 20 new stations. Those are the stations that of the new generation, modern contemporary generations. Those are the equipment that give us the opportunity to make a frog leap to the future. Those are the equipment that is covering our lack of investments for the recent 20 years. We continued extracting gas with the best technologies of the 60s. So now we do not have any more methods to use. The world is going forward and nothing stops us from extracting our own gas and exporting our gas with our technologies, with our expertise, to develop our own competences as it has been done effectively and economically reasonable for us to have our own places in the highest league of the exporters. So you have spoken about the non-conventional gas extraction. Ukraine already has this experience of, for example, the Yuzivka district in Donetsk and Lugansk region, in Ivano-Frankivsk region. There were some works done also. I want to ask us to take a look at the geopolitical point of view. We have the war in the part of Donetsk and Lugansk regions. If we will take a look at the map of the military activity, and if we take a look about the main pipelines map in Ukraine, then we will first of all see that the military actions never taken place where the main pipelines have been from the part of Russia. And the second thing, the military actions, they take part in Donetsk region, where shells coming from that worked in the Yuzivka district. And I would like to ask the question of a famous Russian propagandist. Is it a coincidence or no? You know, it's hard for me to comment upon that, but I'm going to get back from something that I've already started to discuss. At the very big, Putin has announced his strategy. Geopolitical and the supplies of oil and gas are connected. If we follow his words, then everything that you're saying goes into the logical chain. So basically, if geopolitics and gas is a compulsory and interconnected things in the position of the Russian Federation, that it all gets into one puzzle and a logic chain. But in 2019, we are disconnecting those two things, no matter what is the desire of the master of the Kremlin on whether what he sees as. Gas is not a geopolitical weapon. It is a good. It is a product. It has low price, high price, but this is only the commercial relationship that are not connected to the geopolitics. And I believe that this is our biggest achievement, that we'll continue to talk about gas as about a good, but not trying to do that in under-carpet negotiations, trying to get some kind of unclear, unfair relationships. We have an alternative as a country. If we will continue to be connected to the geopolitical issues with supplying gas or oil into this country, we can always import and import it from Europe. But this is all a temporary measures as soon as we will start our own extraction. What is the situation now with the reverse supply to Ukraine with our partners? Gazprom really doesn't like it. That is, well, like, no, what can I do? Gazprom should learn to be competitive. No one owes Gazprom something, so you should follow the client. You should prove that you have better conditions for using your gas, but not like American gas, Norway gas, or whatever. Fight for your client. Fight for your client. If you are not able to do that, if you're not able to fight for your client, then not a single geopolitical weapons that you will have and the wars that you'll have, whatever the geopolitical tools that you have, they will not work. Like your story is quite clear. Both Ukraine and Europe will learn to live without your gas. But whether Ukraine will also increase the supplies of the reverse of the European gas, it only solely depends on the price. So it depends on the market. Yes, it depends on the market. The one who will offer Ukraine as a consumer the best conditions, they will have our businesses. So no one will make us to pay more for the product if we have alternative ways to buy this product. And this is the main achievements from 2014, that currently we have this opportunity to provide all of our needs with the supplies from Europe. If we didn't have this opportunity in place, then in 2019 we would still be dealing with the very same problems that we had in 2009. When you don't have the alternative, you'll have a master, the master that will give you the conditions. We have alternatives. We do not have the master to tell us what to do. We are independent. We are an independent country that decides whom to buy gas from based on the commercial conditions, but not based on any kind of, let us put it this way, not based on other factors. Another news from La Tribune, the French newspaper, they say that the gas agreement based on the background of the conflict on Donbas is basically disputed, but an important event. This is a Christmas present from Putin to Europe that is supported by $2.9 billion reparations to Kiev. The very same time, the French press, they also say that the dependence from Russian gas in Europe is growing. Europe is now providing 62% of the gas needs of Europe, and now Europe has a very hard dilemma to face. Starting with the environmental decisions, and the European countries are trying not to use coal, but only gas imported from Russia can give them this shift from coal with the least economical expenses. And on the other hand, European Union trying to be demonstrate political integrity against Russia with sanctions because of the annexation of Crimea and the support of the militants in Donbas. So, Andriy, we're now covering the environmental factor a bit, but this pipeline that's been constructed by bypassing Ukraine, Nord Stream 2, the project that has now been frozen by American sanctions. What can we say about that? Do you know whether it influences the biosphere of the Baltic Sea and the territories that it covers? If Europe wants to take down coal usage and to shift it with gas. You know, this is a very complicated issue, like a lot of the details from the French newspaper, but you know, the pipeline itself has passed the ecological expertise of the European countries like Denmark, like France and Germany and other waters they should pass. But the second factor, that we can try to be an ostrich and to cover our head into sand, and we should not, and try not to consider the ecological conditions so that Gazprom and other companies are doing work in Siberia. But let us take a look at those ecological factors when we analyze this too. And you know, we have the very same atmosphere. We are in a global climate change, the global warming. And when we're saying that if it goes with the best environmental standards, and at the same time that 1 billion cubic meter of gas is being just banned and is being just spoiled, and we do not have any other ecological standards in Russia that would limit it in some way, this is basically trying to hide out our head into the sand from the reality of oil and gas extraction. The second point I wanted to point out also, which is also an important factor, that plays an important role, that also shows the decreasing role of the geopolitics in energy. What else? The green energy. Green energy is number one. Number one on the consumer energy is growing further on. The wind energy, the solar energy, and the alternative sources of energy, they are now becoming more and more important. It means that the higher percentage of green energy, then the lower the need in coal, which is the dirtiest fuel ecology-wise, but there's also the decrease in need of gas. Yeah, it's not as bad as coal is, but it also has its ecological effect, and Europe has its own decision in place. They are working with the renewables. And yes, the fact is that currently the renewable energy is cheaper than the conventional energy. Yes, I understand your point of view, Andrei, but I would like to get you back to the questions of strategy. We have spoken about the extraction strategy for Ukraine, but let us talk about very, very briefly about the strategy for 5 and 10 years. What will happen with Ukrainian GTS? Well, for the next 5 years, we have a very big consumer of our services of the Ukrainian GTS, the Gazprom company that will be transmitting big volumes of gas. I believe that for the next 5 years, we have a clear understanding that the system will be used in big capacities, in big volumes, and I do believe that those capacities and volumes are going to be growing up till the moment that the Nord Stream will be finalized. And I do believe that it will be around 80 billions, maybe sometimes even 100 billions. That is a real thing to happen. We're not only mentioning 65, 40, 40, it has been signed, but if the Russian Federation want to preserve their share of the market share in Europe, without the Nord Stream 2, they will be managed to increase the volumes of supply through Ukraine, which is a very good thing for us based on profit and economies. But let us continue this opinion. What will happen in 5 years, and what will be what volume of GTS we will need will depend. First of all, whether we'll have transit from Russia, and what will be the internal destruction, domestic extraction in the country. But what about the level of consumption? Yes, well, of course, it is important both in Ukraine and Europe, and yes, of course, it's one of the key factors that is really responsible for the need of the gas transmission system. But we have to be honest with that. We have to say that we have to maintain the system, and because those expenses, we have to maintain the system that has the economical reasoning behind it. And the main factor that we can influence, the main factor that we can influence with our decisions is the extraction volume and the volume of our domestic use of this GTS. The more we extract, the more we use the GTS to provide our internal domestic needs and to export our gas to Europe. Thank you very much. We've had Andrei Favorov, the guest of our platform. Transit 2020 Marathon continues. Please stay with us at the Gas Information Center. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Tom O'Donnell, and I'm a U.S. academic. I teach in Berlin on energy and international affairs. And I've been following very closely the transit contract and Nord Stream 2 issues. I'm here tonight with
Alan Riley. I'm a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. And again, I've been following Nord Stream 2 for some time, and Gazprom and all the energy security issues for a lot longer. So.
Yes. So what shall we begin with? We want to discuss the new contract that's just been announced. So let me ask you a question first. Is this a net positive, or what does it mean for the Ukrainian people?
Well, I think let's start with positive.
Yes.
And there are a number of positives. One is simply that we have some degree of certainty now for the next 5 years.
Yes.
I mean, there's some questions about that, but in principle, we've got a contract which gives certainty and ensures that Ukraine should remain a transit country for the next 5 years, which wasn't the situation yesterday.
Yes.
So that is a positive.
Yes.
But I think one has to say that, and this may sound slightly negative, but actually it is a positive, is what we have to recognize, but by 2025, by the end of this contract, the Russians will be in a position probably to put about 130 billion cubic meters of gas, pretty much what they export to Europe, slightly less, but pretty much most of it through other routes rather than the Ukrainian transit network. I think we have to recognize that.
Yes.
And I think the question for Ukraine is to recognize that we are in probably the last stage of transit, the last 5 years.
Yes.
And that is not a negative. It is a positive in the sense that we've got time, and Ukraine's got time to reform and create new opportunities, enhance its security. And there are lots of ways of doing that. One of them is simply to reform the existing resource-based rules to be allowed to produce more gas. And that's allowing foreigners in, providing legal security, all this sort of thing, providing more modernized regime to be able to extract more gas. There is a lot more gas here. I mean, the essential point about Ukraine, it's the actual home of the Soviet gas industry. A lot of the resources were never fully developed.
Yes.
There's lots of opportunity. We could do that. We could turn Ukraine not merely into self-sufficient, but into a situation where it was a net exporter of gas to the European Union and became actually a source of energy security, not just for itself, but for the whole of the European Union. And then equally with storage, Ukraine is the largest storage capacity in Europe.
Yes.
It could actually increase it, so it provide even more storage facilities. So that's another potential huge opportunity for Ukraine. And this is what really takes you into is the issue of taking the Ukrainian energy system as a whole, gas and electric, and plugging it into the European system. So it becomes a single part of a huge European gas market. And that provides Ukraine both with opportunity and with supply security. And I think these are the objectives for the future. Another part of it is legal, is to ensure all the market traders who are operating in the Ukrainian market, potential foreign investors, that it is very secure to operate here. One option is to upgrade the Energy Community Treaty, which Ukraine is already part of, to enhance legal security so that companies and investors feel safe to operate in Ukraine. All of this enhances Ukraine's own opportunities and Ukraine's security. I think that is a lot of where the future is likely to be now as we live in the last half decade of transit.
Yes. No, I have to say, to a certain extent, I'm surprised that the Russian side, that Gazprom, agreed in the manner that they did at this time. And so you have to ask yourself, there's been 2006, 2009, there's obviously been quite a bit of mischief done by the Russian side. And so one asks themselves, why does this happen? And there's a number of factors. As we know, the big picture, the sort of strategic picture, and essentially this is what you're saying, this isn't going to change. Moscow, Mr. Putin, would like to remove all the gas transit, essentially all the gas transit that used to go through Ukraine, that he formerly used as a source of corruption, a source of control, a source of preventing the formation of a legitimate independent business class here and so forth. Now he knows, because of the resistance of the Ukrainian people and the Second Maidan and so forth, the revolution of dignity, he realizes this has to get out. Now he ordered Gazprom, around 2015 I think it was, he said, I want Nord Stream 2 built before January 2020, right now. The reason is he's straightforward, I don't want a contract, I want the gas out of there. And so the whole Nord Stream 2 project, bringing gas directly from around St. Petersburg to Greifswald in Germany, was to enable that. And so too, a second pipeline around the south of Europe through Turkstream was also intended for the same purpose. That one is basically done, and over the next year will come online. So it was moving along and had hoped that they could accomplish this, but it became clear some months ago, that the project was behind. It was behind, and I think it should give the Ukrainian people a sense of satisfaction to know that a number of European countries opposed this plan and worked very hard through legal means, legislative and legal means, to challenge this pipeline, and that was one of the things that set it back. Another thing, a number of countries whose territory the pipeline had to flow through in the Baltic Sea also hesitated to give permission and held it back as long as they can. So in a number of ways, the pipeline was delayed. And of course, now we have the situation at the ultimate moment, just this last month, the United States Congress passed sanctions on Nord Stream 2. And that forced Allstream, the Swiss firm that was laying the pipe, and in fact, as we understand, it's the only company in the world at this time that has the technological capability of laying this pipe. The pipe was almost done. It's got about 150 kilometers of two sections, so that's 300 kilometers of pipe roughly to lay. It stopped. So the question is here, all these efforts by other European countries and also by the United States Congress in particular, delayed Nord Stream 2, and it might be offline for quite a while. It might be a year, 2 or 3 years, we don't know, before eventually, in some way, we expect Gazprom will eventually do that. So this is, in fact, a major factor, this solidarity, as a major factor in allowing Ukraine to get another contract for 5 years that they otherwise wouldn't have, and give some breathing room as a transition period. And I think this, in that sense.
I think there's been a tremendous amount of solidarity, which I don't think is necessarily recognized. The European Parliament voted in March of this year 402 to 165 to oppose Nord Stream 2.
Yes.
EU Council voted to extend EU law to the import pipelines like Nord Stream 2 24/4, was prepared to do so. Then Germany realized they were going to lose, so they backed down and accepted the application of the law. And that's actually, and that then leads to another thing. Poland brought a case relating to the Opal pipeline, which is the extension, the connecting pipeline for Nord Stream 1. And where they argued that there should be restrictions on the capacity of the pipeline given the supply security effects of Nord Stream 1 on the Polish market. And the point about that case, this is going to be actually potentially really
Well, you mentioned the word solidarity, yes.
Yeah, well, the point is the court of EU court in Luxembourg ruled that there's a principle of solidarity when looking at big energy projects which affect the whole of the European Union, or parts of the European Union, not just one member state. And the point about that is that principle of solidarity, which resulted in doing a supply security analysis of what the effect of that pipeline would be for the whole of the European market, means that we could apply that principle not just to the Opal pipeline, but to Nord Stream 2 as well.
Yes.
So the best case scenario, or perhaps worst case for the Russians, is that actually they'll never be able to use more than about 50% of the pipeline, even if they build it. And one of the really interesting things, not to give us, those who've been following Nord Stream 1 and 2, nightmares, but the prospect that there is even some talk in Moscow, I understand now, of the prospect of Nord Stream 3. Yes. And the reason is because of the Opal decision, they may, in order to get the level of capacity they want, they may have to build a third pipeline. So one of the things which, and you will hear it here first, is whether in one of the responses to the agreement we have entered into yesterday, is whether or not the next move of the Kremlin is to announce a project for Nord Stream 3.
Yes, well,
We will see.
yes, we will see.
Yeah.
I think I should just stress here, there's a lot of talk in the EU about, oh, well, we're going to do away with natural gas sometime soon because, quote, it's just another hydrocarbon. Well, it is a hydrocarbon. It's a lot better than using coal. And the thing is, the reality is, when you look at the statistics, something roughly 40%, 30-40% of European natural gas comes from Russia. And it is true that that dependency is not going to end anytime soon. That's going to go on for a long period of time. So I think people are quite aware in Ukraine and in Europe in general, and actually always ask me, why is it that the German government in particular was supporting the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Now, we know historically that there's this trend in Germany, a political trend called Ostpolitik, where certain parties think it's positive to do lots of business with Russia because this will prevent conflict and so forth, and there's elements of corruption and so forth too. And that's all understood. However, I think there's another section of the German elite, a smaller section, but who realizes that Europe will be dependent on this gas for a long period of time, but they have no idea of, the gas comes through Ukraine, and Ukraine is said to be an insecure place. Well, it's an insecure place not because of the Ukrainians, it's an insecure place because Russia has invaded the country. And so they agree to take the gas out of Ukraine and bring it directly to Germany and redistribute it to avoid this insecurity. But the reality of the situation is, I would say, is that this is a fundamental mistake. The longer that this gas goes through Ukraine, especially if it's a significant amount, like in this contract, it makes Mr. Putin, I would think, it's not just a matter of how much money Ukraine gets, which is considerable, maybe like $7 billion next year or something, right? It's not just that. It's that if he makes more trouble, more instability, or more military actions against Ukraine, it threatens his business with Europe. Yeah. And as long as that can be, it's not going to go on forever, as you said, but as long as that can be maintained, that is more in the direction, I think, of maintaining security of Ukraine and of Europe than moving the gas out of an insecure area. I think that's the wrong approach.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think one of the questions that we've also got to ask is, I suppose, if we're trying to be, what are the dangers here? I mean, what would happen if they break the contract? I mean,
yes.
Well, the simple lawyer's answer, if they break the contract, they're going to get sued. So that's, and Ukraine and Naftogaz has successfully sued Gazprom already, and they froze quite a lot of their assets. So it is, do you want to go down for another $7 billion? So that's another question. But more, and of course, but more difficult for the question is how on earth, how would they do that? Yeah. And I don't think they're going to do that unless Nord Stream 2 is in place. So there are questions of how far, how quickly they can get Nord Stream 2 built. And of course, one way will be to get the sanctions lifted. Now, one of the troubles is that a lot of the discussion about Nord Stream 2, the sanctions regime for Nord Stream 2, is based upon the original Cruz draft. Now, the difficulty is Senator Cruz's draft. Now, if you actually look at the actual text, which was in the Appropriations Act, it is weaker, and it permits a number of bases upon which the president, by executive order, can lift the sanctions without congressional consent. Right. So there is the issue whether or not that were possible. Now, having said that, because all seas are shut down, it'll get onto other contracts, they would have to find somebody who was able to do that and get the sanctions lifted at very short order. Now, that is a question. Right. If they can't do that, then how quickly can they build it? And there are a number of questions about this. And it actually, once you get into the detail, it's more difficult. It is about 250, 300 kilometers, which is not completed. How can they do that? Well, yes, they could build a ship, they could buy a ship. Anybody, but that creates a problem is that if they acquire it from anybody, that person could be faced with sanctions. And also, if they do it themselves, they could be faced with sanctions. So therefore, Gazprom itself has a sanctions problem if it actually seeks to build a pipeline.
Perhaps they should sell the pipeline to Naftogaz.
Well, that would be a solution. As long as it could be on reverse flow, perhaps.
No, I think an important point here, just to stress so people realize, as an American, I have to say, President Trump and others in his administration did not want to put these sanctions. These sanctions were put because in Congress, very bipartisan, both Republicans and Democrats found a way to work together, pass the sanctions, negotiate with the White House so that they would be imposed. That's one reason it came to the final minute. And so, as you're saying, there are various ways in which we have to be vigilant. There are various ways in which these could be lifted too early. The Russian side, in principle, can apply for an exemption from the law if they keep transit high enough through Ukraine and through other countries. And so we'll have to watch and see what develops. But for now, this is a net positive for Naftogaz, and I think the company did a good job. They had to make some concessions, but you have to make concessions to get what you want. They did get paid the $3 billion for the Stockholm arbitration that Putin and Moscow had refused to pay for so long. And they traded other cases that they had brought in return for putting more pressure that Moscow should agree to this contract. So these are complicated negotiations, but generally I think under these conditions did pretty well for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there are a number of reasons why it's difficult to see how easy it will be for for sanctions to be lifted, because it would create a huge political storm in the administration, and it's more for the administration in Washington. So that creates a limitation, which makes that probably less likely than it would be otherwise. Especially when you've got a situation where the president is facing a trial in the Senate. I mean, really.
And you should realize he's facing impeachment because of what he did against the interests of Ukraine. So, and I think that's quite significant to remember. Well, I think we're just about down to the wire here, so we should say Happy New Year to the Ukrainian people.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
And yes, and you're still in the gas transit business in the new year. And good luck with everything.
Okay. That's great.
Добігає кінця наш
So we're
дводенний
almost
марафон
finalizing our
прямому
two-day
ефірі
marathon on air, Transit 2020 marathon. So we have been discussing all of the details and nuances of the transit agreement between Russia and Ukraine. We're talking about Ukrainian achievements in this field because all of those experts who have been throughout our air, they understand that there are other benefits and the achievements of Ukraine, and they say that we have never had those achievements as we had this year with unbundling, with winning in the Stockholm Tribunal as it happened in 2090, as now we have Taras Kachka, the deputy head of the Ministry of Economical Development and Agriculture. Taras, we have talked to you before, and before the agreement has been signed, now you have followed the signing procedures. Now, can you please evaluate the agreement overall? And then I would like to ask you to analyze how this story has been analyzed by the Russian media. I believe that this agreement is a great success and a great victory of Ukraine because it took us 5 years to reach it. You have mentioned the unbundling, the Stockholm Tribunal, and overall the history of creating this success of today. That's not only about the very courageous decisions that this government made, and these were really courageous decisions, but it's also about about this government to be ready to make those courageous decisions in place. And this unbundling, that was a really hard way. It's a very good conclusion of the 5-year transformation on the big corporation of the Ukrainian state, of the Ukrainian gas market, of legislation, the Commission on Regulating Energy Issues, overall the gas world and energy world, the transformation of our relationship with the European Union, and overall this 5 years has shown in what way you can counteract Gazprom, you can counteract the Russian Federation when they do not want to reach the common goal. Because at some point, Gazprom and Russian Federation have understood that the only way for Russian Federation to succeed is to find the rhetorics, not to find their face, but to basically succumb to the rules that we would give them. Well, as far as we are going to the end of our marathon, you can see that the decoration beside Taras, they're moving because we have his children there and they're trying to reach their father. So they're trying to get so our decorations will be moving. But let us say our team has chosen the biggest quotes for the media for us to analyze it. The Ministry of Energy of Russia, Abika Ru, has said that Ukraine and Russia has reached the win-win decision, and quotes, we had a very different position from the very beginning. We wanted to have a contract from 1 year to 3 years and the transfer from 3 billion a year, but our Ukrainian colleagues wanted to have more. But we have now stated the minimal amounts of transit, and the legislation of Ukraine give us the opportunity to regulate our supply depending on the demand of European users, consumers, and the Ukrainian natural conditions. So Andriy Kovalyev has already commented on that. We have the minimum volume of the supply. There is something that might start increase in the process, and it will have a different prices, the market prices. Yes, and this is basically the phrase that the Ukrainian Minister of Energy could also say, because this is the main victory, that we now had this change, this click, and the Russian government has started to speak with European rhetorics with us. This is what we wanted. We wanted the minimum of the guaranteed amounts, understanding that Gazprom will be forced to pipe up more, and we are using now much more the European rules. Now we have the operational agreement. Now you can go these additional 100 million cubic meters, but the tariff will be calculated according to European methodology, and you will pay that. This is basically what the agreement says. Basically, they are showing them as their victory, and they're showing us their victory that what we've offered to them to do in July last year, at least. Okay, let us then get to the next media. That's RBK Russia. The Ministry of Energy of Russian Federation, he said that the price for gas for Ukraine would be market-based, and he presupposes that we're not going to be sad. They will be selling gas gas not only to Naftogaz but to other companies. Novak believes that it will give the opportunity to Kiev to buy gas in a cheaper price throughout intermediaries. And Russia is also ready to talk about modernization of Ukrainian GTS and their participation. Alexander Novak has stated. Can you comment upon this story? Russia is ready to discuss the modernization of Ukrainian pipelines. This is the rudiment of their, let us say, like the rudiments, narratives. This is the thesis that they're using all the time, that they should be engaged in Ukrainian GTS, that they can invest some money in modernization of Ukrainian GTS. It was never in our plans, as far as you know, and Naftogaz has said it many years before, that in our operator of our transport system, we have the advices from the European operators of the gas transmission systems, and even if we will have any kind of consortium for modernization, then those consortiums will be set with the European Union or the US, that is presupposed with the Ukrainian legislation. Russia would like to participate in the modernization of Ukrainian gas transmission system. It used to be all the time throughout all of our independence, but currently it is not possible. What is also interesting on the other side, Ukrainian market is very good, is very attractive for them, and they understand that it's that attractive for them that they're really ready to work under European rules just to get back to our market. And this is basically the biggest importance. Ukrainian market is the biggest loss for Gazprom if they're speaking about selling to Ukraine. So that is why they're trying to find the ways and the formulas so they will find clients here, not to sell in Naftogaz, not to sell directly to the state, but to find, for example, like a gas trader who would like to work with that, even because, of course, the Ukrainian legislation permits to do that. So I do believe we have to be also prepared that we will find there will be some kind of company that will have this agreement with Gazprom to buy directly. That will be a private-owned company in order to test out the opportunities to sell gas here. It's not going to be a treason because we have the main policy that we have to trade through European Union without any direct agreements, because we see how Gazprom has been manipulating those direct sales before, up till the moment that last year they have actually violated the supply to gas when we have provided after the Stockholm Tribunal. That is why currently they will be using our, let us say, European legislation system in this case in order to enter our market step by step, and that is okay. That basically means that Gazprom accepts that here we have a European market and you have to be dealing under the European conditions. So this is the European relationship, and Gazprom also accepts it. Yes, this is our biggest victory, because everyone said that never ever, under no circumstances, as Mr. Miller has said, the third package, the third package is not interested in that. Now, this is what we have now. These numbers, these rates, these figures, whatever the agreements have been, it has been lost here, but the biggest our victory is that Gazprom is basically accepted our basic offer that you should live under European rules. And that's very interesting thing, how they're like, this is the imperial moment that they've never said they were forced to do that. They're only saying like, yes, they're only saying about their own capacities and opportunities in that, under that. You know, not all of the people are that optimistic about that. Not all of the people are crying out on the victory from the Russian side. We have more blank statements. For example, Vice Prime Minister of Russia, Dmytro Kozin, they say that negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, that's a choice between bad and very bad. They say that the $3 billion is a hard decision that have been paid to Ukraine, and there is this quote, Giroux says it, quotes him, to say who won and who lost, it's not possible for us and Ukraine. The one thing that we can say that this $2.9 billion that we will pay after the tribunal decision, this is just drop in the ocean up to those claims and potential risks that might have been towards Russia. Those amounts of money would have been higher. And, you know, we're speaking about almost $8 billion that we have taken down as a previous claims, and the people say that Russia would pay those. It's not a fact. And Cossacks say that they're really happy that we're taking down those claims. We have to dig deeper here, because what Mr. Kozak says in this case is that words. He says, like, Putin, you're not right. So Vladimir Vladimirovich, you're wrong. This he goes against the words of President Putin. But Kozak is a person who has been at the very same position as Putin is. Yeah, so we have to compare this thesis that he said with the first messages of Putin when he first commented about this agreement to take place. And he said, like, you forget about Stockholm because it wasn't an unfair ruling. Forget about all of the tribunals, and then we will start again the negotiation. And he said that, like, okay, you will get to the European rules, you have to prove us. Yeah, I can quote Putin. You have just mentioned him, so this RBK, Russia, and you know all the Russian prince, they also quote Putin. But he said this connection between what 3 billions have been paid according to the Stockholm Tribunal, and when again the president of Putin at his annual press conference, he said that the doubts we can exchange in doubts. So you have said about these 3 billions on the Stockholm Tribunal. I would like to pay your attention that part of our reserve money from the Fund of National Welfare of Russia have been invested into Ukrainian equities. 3 billion, by the way. We have already the ruling in the London courts that hasn't been taken into action. The Stockholm Tribunal doesn't have the law-abiding character. It also had a political role. One of the moments of the Stockholm is because of the hard financial situation in Ukraine. This is basically bullshit. That's end of quote. So we have to pay this attention to that. You know, that has been always a constant topic that the Stockholm doesn't have the law abiding, but is a political decision. That was the cornerstone for them. They have started with their rhetorics with that. Well, Mrs. Putin rhetorics, not the Russian overall. But now the ministers of energy says, like, you know, that's not a lot of money that we're going to pay there. And Mr. Miller says that, and Mr. Kozak says, like, 2.2 billion, we can do more. So basically what they're saying, like, you know, Vladimir Putin, the reality is different. And who says this? These are the members of the Russian government. It's not the Ukrainian patriots. But why is those differences? Why you can't explain why it's happening? No, that's very easy why it's happening. Because at some point, because we haven't succumbed to any conditions of Russia, like we have the very strict and sustainable line, we're not succumbing to the Russian conditions. We didn't have not a single person in the world who would play out with the Russian Federation. So that's why they really had to follow the rational position, and they have followed it. Because all of those claims that they've made, all of those messages that they sent, that was the political imagination for the domestic Russian user, but it never has impressed any other international parties. Okay, but the tribunals, they have the political, but it's political, it's about the claims. Argument in fact, the newspaper, they say that there was a very good tactics by Trump, that the sanctions that have been imposed on the Nord Stream 2, they did influence the negotiations on gas transit, because those sanctions could postpone or complicate the final 100 kilometers of the pipeline. And we also had the opinion from Thomas O'Donnell, the analytic from Berlin, and he said that it's not Trump's decision, it's the Congress decision. So they've had connected the sanction story into the defense sector. Yes, that's it, that's true. Well, first of all, I believe a lot of people have already commented upon this issue, and we have people who are directly connected to advocating this decision in Congress, because this is definitely the decision of Congress, not Trump's decision. But Trump has signed it very quickly. He wasn't against it, he didn't veto it. And I do believe that this is the situation when it's not about the decision of will, like, you know, I have made this decision and I decided it today. But this is the really force, well, not force, this is the situation when the conditions have changed in that way that it has become quite clear, and it has become quite clear and appropriate for all of the people to use the sanctions, to impose those sanctions. Yeah, I've just recalled Mr. Thomas O'Donnell. He said that basically it might have been signed in September. Yeah, but you know, I believe that there is a very interesting thing that happens. It's If we're speaking about Germany, then I do believe that there was a bad joke that was played out by one thing that we have already discussed in the autumn, that the German Bundestag, they tried to implement this change for the European gas directive on Nord Stream 2, so it would actually make possible to complete the construction of Nord Stream 2. I do believe that this desire for Germany as the country, the main country in the European Union, to give this opportunity, to give this gap, to build, to construct Nord Stream 2, I do believe that it also had its influence for the sanctions imposing also, because the United States of America, up till the recent times, they've said that it's a European case, and of course those changes to the European gas directive that we've managed to carry on, to push through with all of the people, with all of our allies, they should have provided them the opportunity to avoid the sanctions. But the fact is that Gazprom still tried to lobby to find a gap, to create a gap, to finally construct the Nord Stream 2. So this moment about the autumn that was seen everywhere, in Brussels, in London and Brussels, and the fact that it became visible that Germany has a slight manipulations going on, I do believe that it's given us the opportunity to break the trend finally, and the Trump said, like, okay, no more playing around anymore. We're giving you all of the chances for the Europe to stop this construction. You know, that is what I have thought right now. I really want the people who are now watching us, so all of the citizens who are watching us or didn't watch us, for them to have at least a part of the knowledge that you have, and the experts that have been throughout this 2 days marathon with us, because if we had that, then the people would not like to have the simple answers to the complex questions, but then they wouldn't divide everything to black and white, and they would actually analyze what we used to have, what has changed, what are the pluses and minuses of these processes, and why are we still discussing that this is the victory. This is the victory in this very complex issue as the gas relationship between Russia and Ukraine. But we're trying to inform us as much as possible, and if people are watching us, then yes, of course, you will now learn more with us. I will quote a couple of additional publications, and we will finalize our conversation with Taras Kachka. And so, Russian Interfax. They're quoting Dmitry Medvedev, the Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, who said that the American sanctions will not stop Russia from building the Nord Stream 2. Medvedev says a couple of months, that no catastrophe, especially under the condition that we had reached an agreement on transit. That was Medvedev said to Interfax. Couple of months, they say they need to finalize the construction of the Nord Stream 2. I believe that the agreement, the completion of agreement on gas transit and the finalization of unbundling in Ukraine will not stop the tryouts of Russian Federation to complete the Nord Stream 2 at all costs. But, you know, this is the case of a lot of money that has already been invested into that. Yes, but, you know, as it were, is our situation. As soon as the Russian Federation will understand that there is no other options, they will try out. So this is the option, the very strict, the very stubborn option to keep on working with your own line. What we did with the Nord Stream 2, the whole world has stopped it. They stopped the construction of it. Even though all of the claims of the Russian Federation on Nord Stream 2, they have been very confident, they have been very optimistic, fantastic, let us say cautiously sure that it's much cooler than transit through Ukraine. So I would actually consider those claims that it's not critical, that it just will take a couple of months. We just see that all the Seas press release who said that, you know, all of their fleets are going to be delivered to the different projects. So it will not take a couple of months. I believe that it might take. I believe that the Nord Stream 2, the company itself, they understand it will last for a couple of years. Why? Because they have already the investment claims against European Union. The investment claims, when you're saying about the investment claim, this is the last hope reserve. it. Because when some kind of the losses are being done and the companies believe that it's not irreplaceable, so you need to get back some of the money. It lasts for a couple of years, the result is very unclear, and the fact that they have already returned with those claims to the European Commission, they understand that they are not able to construct the Nord Stream 2 in the format that they wanted it to be. Yes, physically, I believe that maybe they will be stubborn and then we'll finalize it in some time. Yes, but let us remind to those people who are watching us why Russia is that interested in the Nord Stream 2. Let us summarize all of the information we have, because we will continue mentioning Nord Stream 2. We will celebrate the new year and we will analyze those agreements once again. Why Russia builds it up? Why they're interested in that? Why a German party that actively to provide, to support the building and the construction of the Nord Stream 2? Whether really sure that this is a business project, not political one. For Germany, that's a very business project, because this is the exchange of the center of influence towards Germany on the gas market. Germany has the experience of constructing pipelines, and our GTS was also built together with Germany, and they want to develop the pipeline construction sphere. And the most important for the Russian Federation, it is a global business strategy of Gazprom to build pipelines in order to create some long-term dependence from Russian gas. And thus, for them, this is their business strategy, their business plan, and they want to, in some way, preserve the gas market, even though that everyone is saying that the gas market is changing because of the LNG, because of the change of the extraction. So this is basically the fight of the generation. Gazprom, they're putting their bets on the old technology. The other players, they're betting on the new technologies on the market. So it's not only the question of bypassing Ukraine. This is the question about fighting for the European market that the Russian Federation takes. And I cannot know the TASS services. This will be the final quote from the Russian media today. The head of the Russian Ministry of External Affairs, Foreign Affairs, he said that Sergei Lavrov has said that there will be additional sanctions against the U.S. And Lavrov has also said that he criticized the sanction. The head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he said that this is violating their own dignity of the European partners. Like the European partners, they have been basically disgraced. So this is once again a way trying to affect the emotions of the European Union. That's as if the United States of America meddles into the European affairs and they kind of show their inferiority towards the European affairs. But Lavrov forgets that if we're speaking about safety and defense in Europe, that this is the joint effort by United States and European Union. NATO is about European Union and Europe and the United States. That is why the United States have a very influential voice inside of Europe if it speaks about security. So no one tried to disgrace or discredit anyone. Another point that I've said, that up till the very last moment, everyone had the chance to regulate it on their own inside of Europe. And the question that the German Bundestag, the politician inside of the Bundestag, they tried to find the gaps to complete the construction of the Nord Stream 2, showed that Europe is not capable of taking those serious decisions, even that on the level of the European Union, this decision has been made. So I do not believe that it's about trying to disgrace anyone, but it's about showing that the European Union, by 99%, they're trying to resolve their issues on their own in the security questions also. But there is the issues of the high level of defense matters that are joined for Europe and United States of America. That is why the voice of the United States is really needed in this case. It really follows the overall logic. So Lavrov is quite clear, and this also has been commented by TASS. He says that the Congress is behind the anti-Russian sanctions. They're trying to take down the plans of Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo to develop trade with Russia. That's what I mentioned, that it's not about Trump deciding to do that. And the final question to you with that and all of the situation and Lavrov's point of view. But who was the one who pursued Trump, who tried to pursue the Ukrainian position in Senate and in how did you manage to influence Congress? What are the professional lobbies? So this was the work that we haven't seen and no one has told us about it in the media. But what to tell you about here, it's a very boring work, I would say. Like all of our work is very boring. So all of the story about the unbundling, about the sanctions, it's very boring. I'm really happy that we're finalizing this program like that. Yes, this is a boring work because those are about documents that are really hard to be written in the simple language, harder to explain in a simple language. This is a systematic work, and I cannot say that there was one final sentence that actually persuaded him to sign it. No, that's not about. There was like a whole bunch of documents and a whole amount of work that has played as a force. Taras, thank you very much for laughing us. You know, you can already, your children have already entered our frame because your children, they're trying to destroy our decoration. But you know, Taras' children are already here. Taras, I will let you go because I see that your children really need you. But okay, let us make it all together, you know. So in this case, we already throughout our conversation with Taras, thank you very much for this in-depth analytics. Thank you for being here on the 31st of December. We are finalizing our marathon 2020. So the final chord in a couple of seconds. Have a nice New Year Eve. We will let you go. That was a good present for all of our state, all of this contract, all of this agreement, the whole story about the reform of our gas sphere has ended up like this. So we have to stick to it till next year. We will try to do that all together. Thank you. Congratulations for the new year. like to
днів в
kindly
прямому
remind you that
ефірі
throughout
ви
these 3
дивилися
days you have
марафон
been
«Транзит
following the
2020».
Marathon
І ще
Transit
вчора на початку
2020
нашого
live.
марафону
Just
Тетяна
yesterday, at the
Гончарова,
very
Віталій
beginning
Губін
of
з вами
our
працювали. Ми
marathon,
поставили
Tatiana Goncharova, Vitaly
питання.
Gubin, we
Тож,
have started
чи
with a question.
скасовується
So
третя
whether
газова?
the third gas war will be cancelled. Yes, the third gas war is cancelled because Russia has signed the new agreement on transit gas
І друге
through
питання, яке ми
Ukraine.
ставили,
Yes,
чи
and the second
відрекомендувала
question
себе
was
Україна
whether
як
Ukraine has
надійний
recommended
транзитер?
itself as a trustworthy transitor. Yes, Ukraine has always been a trustworthy partner for our
І
European
питання,
colleagues.
яке
And the
хвилює
question that
кожного
really
українця,
bothered
чи буде
every
тепло
Ukrainian,
в
will
оселях
we have the
українців
heating
на Новий
in
рік і
our
на Різдво?
households
Ми теж
throughout
обіцяли
New Year
дати
and
відповідь.
Christmas? And we wanted to answer this question also. The question is yes, yes, it will be warm not only in the Ukrainian houses but also in the European households also. And we will multiply it with the warmth of the families. So, you know, he started very poetically and we ended our marathon poetically. So throughout these 2 days, 6 hours yesterday, 5 hours today, Vitaly Gubin, Tatiana Goncharova, we really analyzed the history of the gas agreement. We've analyzed the victory of Ukraine on this issue, and here it's not a metaphor. That is a victory that has been approved by the number of factors. It happened for the very first time in history of Ukraine. This is the first victory of Ukraine of that kind. Thank you very much for all of those people who have been with us for 2 days, who have been online following the negotiation process, who have been following the signing of this agreement, whether Russian will stop the transit or no. Thank you once again. Tatiana Goncharova, Vitaly Litvin, thank you very much for being with us. Congratulations on the holidays. The third gas war is cancelled.